We're live.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film adventure on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are continuing a monthly venture inside uh, Brandon of SeptumSin versus the World's Mind. So, uh, why don't you, Brandon, tell us exactly what movie that you had us watch and why it means something to you?
Well, I've kind of picked some oddities this month, most comedic in one way or another. And this one is my anime pick for the month, which is, gosh, what is his name? Which is Masaaki Yuasa's film, The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. Jake isn't here, so he can't correct me and say, no, you need to do the full Japanese name. But he can say that later. That's a 2017 film. And it is about the various adventures in one long night between a young girl and her senpai. So I'm sure I've got a lot of first timers here, but I'm just gonna go from I'll just start directly next to me. So Brittany, this is your first time watching this film?
Definitely. It definitely was a interesting film, interesting look and all, and it's some of the sort of more rough animation for anime that's out there, but it still comes out in a unique sort of animated form that's definitely interesting. Story-wise, a bit mixed for me.
Huh? All right. Well, so did you like it first time through, or like the basic concept of it?
I found it as an interesting concept. I feel it could have been done a little bit better, though.
All right. So Dane, which we've got back with us, has this your first time watching this?
Yes. Oh boy. So, okay, I'm gonna try not to go on a rant, although I probably will end up ranting. So I have to. This film put me in a very bad, bad headspace, um, and I have to be of two for several reasons, but I have to be of two minds about this because you know me. I like to be as rational and as objective as possible when I view art. And through that lens, I would say that this film is one of the more avant-garde anime films that I've seen. It has a good grasp of surreality and comedy, and it doesn't do a lot of typical anime things on one level, and then on another level, it does. It is able to visualize things about the experience of falling in love that are very visually evocative and I'm sure kind of speak to a lot of common experiences that people in Japan must have. Okay. So, in that respect, if you like really avant garde animation, and I do very much, then this one might be one to check out. So, that's my level headed, objective opinion. Then I have to put on the hat of me as a person. This film was basically if you wanted to construct the perfect form of cinematic torture for me, this film was it. Like, you couldn't have personally hurt me any more than by putting this film on, and I hate to say that because that makes it sound really rude. I apologize, Brandon, but it's like this film really put me in a bad, bad headspace for several reasons. It was constant, real so much shit was flying at me. the entire time that I know has much deeper cultural significance that I am not picking up on because I'm not Japanese, and I am attempting to be very as informed about this stuff as I can be, while also just analyzing the themes as they're coming at me. And I do think there are themes to analyze, and we will get into that. But it was more so that the true context of this thing is being totally lost on me, and I know it is, and I don't like feeling stupid. But there's a lot of, I'm sure, underlying context that I'm not getting, um, that I think would increase my ability to enjoy the movie if I knew it. And it's coming at me at a million miles a second. So already I feel like a dumbass, and I don't like that when it comes to, appreciating art, especially from another country, because I want to be worldly, I want to be informed, and all that. And I did come into this blind, I will admit. So that's on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the story itself really gets to me on a personal level because it reminds me a lot of something like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which I absolutely hate, at least the film that I saw, which I really hate because it's another. It basically just needles me in the worst possible ways because of like you've got the guy who's like pining after the girl, and it's just it's basically, as someone who's been pretty badly burned by romance itself, this is like so many scenes in this really felt like a stab in the heart, and especially in the climax where the guy's like being tortured by his own demons basically, and it's like, yeah, this is basically the exact opposite of the kind of movie I needed to watch. And and also it's just I found it annoying. I found it really like it was only an hour and a half, but it felt like it went on and on and on. And again, I'm trying to be objective. I'm trying to appreciate what the artist is trying to say to me, all that stuff. And it's like, basically, this felt like I was having needles, put into my brain, into my everything, and I was just, oh God. And that's, I hate to say that because I don't like putting my own personal bullshit into my appreciation of art. I don't like that. And I don't like being an ignoramus when it comes to the art from another country because I know that the artist meant to, show like a fun romantic comedy, a fun kind of surreal piece of animation. And if you didn't come into it with all the personal baggage that I have, you'd have probably loved it. I just know based on my own history and my own feelings that this was like, the worst parts of myself that I don't want to think about, put on the screen. So that's not your fault. That's not the artist's fault. That's why I have to be of two minds about it. So, yeah, I think objectively a person would probably really like this. For me personally, it was pretty torturous.
I'm sorry that's how it came across. Again, nothing personal on my end.
No, nobody could know that except for me, and that's why I'm not passing any blame on anybody except really myself. It's really my own problems.
So I'd definitely be interested in your thoughts as far as the structure and so on, because I know that you can grasp some of these things that a lot of us cannot, which
Yeah.
is
And
one thing.
there are plenty of themes in this, and I think I grasped what the artist was trying to tell me. I think,
uh,
but again, I am sure that I'm not appreciating it fully, given the cultural backbone and the cultural context in which these things arise. So I'm coming at it from a Western perspective, and I feel like in doing so that I'm missing a lot of what was intended. At least that's my suspicion. Maybe I'm right on. I don't know. But at any rate.
I'm sure between you and Brittany, we'll get a good analysis of how this is made up. So, Kroll, it's your first time watching it. And how much did you hate this one?
Well, yes, it is the first time watching it, and actually, I didn't hate it.
Wow.
It was interesting. It was funny in scenes. Some of the animation itself annoyed me. Some of the, I don't know, I don't know how to describe it. It's like overacting, but in pictures.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That but yeah, I laughed a lot. Just the story was pretty decent. She's basically going all around. It's not just the other bars, but
Now you watched it in a dub, correct?
No.
In English, or did it have subtitles?
No, in English.
There was an English dub on HBO Max, which I found out today when y'all mentioned it. I was like, there's none on my disc. And I'm looking, it's like, those bastards. Because trust me, that's probably one of the least favorite things about this for me is having to read all the subtitles at mock speed.
Yeah, I definitely would not like that. I don't like reading my movies. I like to watch my movies. So I'm very glad that it was English. So it worked out great that your copy didn't, just gave me Japanese and that was it. No subtitle, nothing. I'm like, I watched it for like 30 seconds and I'm like, no. I'm like, I better find another copy or I'm not watching this movie.
Yeah, I watched the sub version that Brandon sent, and I tried to watch it like maybe a week ago, and just given the frenetic pacing, the fact that I would have to read it really fast, I was like, I can't do this right now. I have to like be in a specific headspace for this thing, and then when I did, but again, I'm having to separate the two because I don't like my own feelings being painted as if it's the movie's fault because it's not. But anyway, keep going.
But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't like anime. It's definitely not like anything I've seen, and talking about it, like telling me about it, doesn't sound like something I would necessarily like. But it was a fun film. I mean, it was almost like a regular comedy, that just in animation style, and most of the animation wasn't that bad and added to the story, like was already said, the nightmare part with your own demons and stuff, and I thought that was really interesting myself. I think a lot of people can relate to that, having demons like that, maybe not too bad of a degree as some, but everyone can relate to it, and overall, I think the film did a really good job, and not really action in it, but it was funny. It was definitely a decent comedy, and I'm glad I was able to hear it in English, so I was able to appreciate it and listen to it and enjoy it much better.
Oh yeah, if I had known about it, I probably would have watched it in the dub myself. Actually, just because, so I can understand. And yes, actually, Yuasa is a very unique artist in that his style.
Yeah,
is
very much.
fresh. I mean, Devilman Crybabies like that, and a couple others. So it's a very unique style. So Dawn Underwear.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. For some reason, I just had to, before I logged on here, had to don the underwear. So, and
never take them off
as it happens, I am wearing underwear. So, but in any case,
but is it the same underwear you wore when you started this film?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, yes.
What would be worse?
My pants during this.
What would be worse and more impressive is if you or I, Brandon, had tried to go from our first viewing till now. That would be.
At least I didn't decide to go commando.
Well, I don't think Brandon would have been married anymore if he tried to do that. Or have a
Probably
job,
not.
So this was a first time watch for me. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the film because it was so staccato and all over the place. But then I started thinking that maybe they actually pieced together bits and pieces of the story by using Don Underwear being like a different interpretation of Don Quixote after his Dulcinea, you know, mixing it with classic literature and espionage with the Count of Monte Cristo, being kind of a musical opera kind of a thing going on. So I got bits and pieces of it. I realized that there are two people that are trying to get together, and just keep having passing moments. And I don't know. It's kind of confusing. And I guess I did enjoy pieces of this. It's just, it is very clunky and very, I don't know, very artsy in moments. And I guess it's kind of like there's a lot going on, and I couldn't entirely enjoy it because there's just so much going on. But I was entertained, and I guess if you enjoy a movie that will actually like give you some kind of entertainment, I mean, there were some funny parts, but it wasn't a straight-faced story. It kept going here and going there and going here, so it didn't give you enough time to sit and enjoy the segments that you were trying to. And I guess it didn't help that not only was it staccato, but you had to read it too. So I couldn't really focus on what was going around it this time. I mean, for the most part, with subtitles, I'm okay with subtitles these days, but for some reason the focus just wasn't there.
Oh, wait till we get to Zetsubo Sensei.
I can't wait.
That one's much worse about the staccato.
I pray to God it has a dub.
I don't think they're doing a dub for it.
Well, as much effort as they've put into putting this release out, I'm sure that's part of it, but I don't know.
I would love to see it. Are you done, Dave?
I mean, even the dub.
Yeah, I think I'm done.
If they do a dub,
it's just, I don't know. It's just not my entire cup of tea. Although it has elements of things that if I cared more about, being more invested into the characters, that I would be definitely interested in. Like I like old books, and I liked that aspect of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the fact that there was a god of old books protecting the old books or whatnot. But there was just so much going on even there, So,
and we'll definitely get into analyzing the plot as we go. So, Jake, I know the answer to this, but is this your first time seeing the film?
Hell no, it's definitely not. And actually, before I launch into that, I want to say that just real quick to Dane, we did miss you during my month, and we're glad even if you didn't like it, we're glad you stuck your head out of the rabbit hole for this one.
Yeah, I've been in the rabbit hole very intentionally.
Yeah,
and I felt bad saying what I said because I'm trying to pay Brandon back.
If it makes you feel better, when we started February, Dave and Tammy eviscerated my first choice, and Ron was just as harsh on my anime selection. So I got to sit through that more than once last month. So.
Yeah, well, that's why
I'm sorry, man. Your anime was so bad. I was terrified to watch this one.
I had to separate my criticism out here because I know that it's not the movie's fault and it's not a fault of the film, story-wise or anything. Right. I think for what the movie's going for, I think it does it very creatively. It just so happened to activate like a lot of personal wounds
Yeah.
that I have, but it no, as a film itself, I think it accomplishes what it sets out to be, and that's the only thing that matters when it comes to artistic criticism.
And there are films like that, that definitely that you can see why people like it, but you don't feel it. And
Oh yeah, American Beauty's right.
there definitely are some like that. But with this one, I definitely was feeling it. And as we go along, I'll mention there were some things I had issues with too. But and Brandon can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, back in the days before COVID, we would go see movies. And I believe one of, if not the first Fathom event that we went to was that Mary and the Witch's Flower one, where we got the really cool little tickets and all that stuff.
Oh,
Was
framed,
that?
I've got it framed above
Yeah.
the fireplace.
But wasn't it that one where the bonus at the end was the opening scene from this
Yes.
movie, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So we went to see the Studio Ponach film Mary and the Witch's Flower, which is a great film as well. And at the end, they had a little stinger, which was the opening wedding scene from this movie. And probably like a 5-6 minute scene, if I'm remembering correctly. And we saw it and we were like, holy crap, we're coming back to see this. and we saw it, and I got it probably not long after it became available on Blu-ray. I know we watched it when we did the best anime movies discussion. I can't remember how many other times. I've maybe seen it 3 times before we did this. And I actually had forgotten that my copy did not have a Blu-ray, an English track. Yeah. So I was planning to watch the English, and then I put it on, and it's like, oh, it's already well, okay, I'll watch Japanese. And then I was like, I watched the movie, and I finished. This author, the author of the book that this is based on, is Tomohiko Marini. And he also wrote the book, The Tatami Galaxy, which also was turned into an anime series by Masaaki Yuasa and writer Makoto Ueda. So the same team did both the books and the anime. And that was its own story on how anxious we were to see that series. I got a hold of it when Funimation finally released it, and it was sitting on the shelf for a couple of years, and it wasn't until I watched this film I was like, I need to finally watch Tatami Galaxy. So I finally finished it this morning, and I was really disappointed I didn't get to watch this again afterwards. They're in the same universe. There are a lot of similar characters, and there's a similar flavor, but you won't lose a lot. It's just one of those things, kind of like last week we watched Marx Brothers. You'll get a lot more of the in jokes and things if you've seen other Marx Brothers films. It's that sort of deal. But I am glad I finally got that done. And taken as a whole, I really love this little world that Yuasa has here. I don't love all the characters. Some of them try my patience in both the series and the movie. But the main character in this, the main characters are Senpai and Kohai, or the Otome with the black hairs, the other name the girl goes by. I love her. Senpai, he's kind of a blank slate, whatever. And I'm pretty sure that some of the triggering things were named. I would probably actually agree with some of them. I also find the movie's completely glib portrayal of alcoholism to be a little bit problematic.
Yeah,
it's funny, but it's way too glib about it.
Well, that's
yeah.
I'll get into that
Right.
after you're done with yours, but it's like there's a lot of things in this that reminded me of my own past in a not so good way, and that's one of them.
I've had back when I was that age, I definitely had a lot of brushes with a lot of this stuff going on here. Obviously not nearly as crazy as some of these things were, but and luckily I did not know anyone as demented and strange as Higuchi, who is a fixture in both the movie and the series. He's the Yotsuya of this production.
Tengu.
What's that?
I think Tengu would be the way that they referred to him.
Yeah, right. That was how he self-styled Tengu, if I remember correctly. Overall, though, there's something about it. It's the animation style is very strange. I've seen a few of Yuasa's works. This one has a little more of a retro vibe than, say, Ride Your Wave or Lou Over the Wall, and it's got kind of a weird retro vibe, which really I like. I like that way. The animation is far more polished than it was in the series. It's a gorgeous film, and I love the music. I absolutely love the music involved. I've been talking all the last several days going on and on about the themes for the series, but I love the themes from this too. Just on a production level, it's a film that it sucks you in, and every time I watch it, I'm like, that was an experience. and I like that. But is it the greatest film I ever seen? I wouldn't say that, but it's an enjoyable one.
Well, my experience is very similar to Jacob's experience. Of course, Jacob and I also took my wife to see it, which she's still been kind of newish to anime, so it was kind of a weird movie to take her to early on. But I wasn't quite expecting it to be as odd, because that preview didn't quite display how odd it truly was going to be.
No.
But there was one thing that I looked at this movie and it brought me back, is that it was fascinating to me. It drew me in, and one of the things that I look at when I think of films that I really do like is it's films that can hold my attention for the majority of the film. If I'm not getting there looking at my phone, kind of like zoning out, then that's a good thing. And there's only a handful of films that I'm like that for, very small amount. And this one is one of them. Mainly, I guess, because you have to be paying attention or else you can't keep up. But also the world itself and the storytelling really does suck you in. And that general feeling really kind of lets you ride the wave through. I also chose this one because I've watched it. This is my third viewing. And I'll admit, there are a lot of parts in this that I was a bit more confused by, and felt like I could definitely benefit from more detailed analysis with other people looking at it from different angles.
Well, we can get into that whenever you're ready, because I do think that there is, again, as much as it did hit me badly on a personal level, I do think there are some interesting themes that it's tackling. And I thought Dave hit something really neat with the Don Quixote comparison, because that part didn't resonate with me, although the Count of Monte Cristo thing did, because they mention it, but also because I thought of the Gankutsuo anime. So the Japanese must really love that story, or enough of them to make those two references. But then again, it's popular the world over, so it's probably not exclusive. But
Well,
that's something cool though, Dave. Actually, you came up with something that
you could also almost interpret the senpai as Don Quixote himself.
Something like that, yeah. I mean,
he's definitely tilting at windmills.
Yeah, I was gonna say his quest is a very quixotic one, that's for sure. And the well, if you want to talk about analysis, well, are you done with your impressions, or?
Well, the only other thing I just had to say about it is that the confusion really kind of stems. I felt like the movie was more solid in the beginning for me and kept unraveling for me until the end. I was kind of lost. But that's it, you know. And once and then go ahead, Dane, and then of course I'll come back and then I'll start talking a little bit more about the plot after.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think in terms of themes, I think this film really is about kind of two separate types of people, as well as the nature of, well, love relative to experience. Because, forgive me, I couldn't remember people's names, but Senpai is, I guess, the guy, and then what's the girl?
Mhm.
What do they call her?
Just think, girl with the black hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're actually not named. You know, they go by senpai, an older classmate, kohai, younger classmate.
Mhm.
She's also credited as Kurokame no Otome, the girl with the black hair. But
Otome, yeah.
everyone else has names, but they don't.
Yeah, and that's all fine. But basically, I think this comes down to love versus experience and how those things go hand in hand. How she is all about experience of the moment, of the now, emphasized by the constant drinking, the constant, embracing life, all that kind of stuff. Whereas our hero is all about love as like this transformative thing and all that kind of stuff. And how certain there's also a generational gap too that I found interesting, that the older people, some of their ideas, like that weird dance that they do, which again, like every minute in this movie I was like, what the fuck am I watching? That's what I kept saying to myself. And that dance in particular, I was like, it's good.
The
selfish
selfish dance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that
self-
whole thing. Well, but I think what that's intended to mean is that, old people of other generations, they've loved, they've lost, they've experienced, and, they kind of wonder, what am I leaving behind? And in that case, it's something that they developed that is now being carried down to a younger generation. So in that sense, that part carried over. And then meanwhile, the one person, the god or whatever that she sees at the very end, he feels like he missed out on his life, missed out on his happiness, and she reminds him that no, indeed, he did touch other people's lives, and it just so happened that in his misery he was touching them with a literal love sickness. I mean, I think that was kind of a little on the nose with the symbolism there, but yeah, people are literally lovesick, which again, amazing in the time of COVID to be thinking about that. Because like they're all wearing masks and stuff, which again the Japanese were doing anyway.
Yeah.
But then I think about that, I'm like, this takes on a whole new meaning nowadays, and it wasn't even that
Yeah.
that many years before the pandemic started. But yeah, just like, oh, this is so rich now. Um, but I do think in terms of themes, it's like I do think it is about that, about embracing life, embracing opportunity and experiences. She embraces life all the time, but her punish she doesn't really have many consequences for doing so. That's an issue that I have with it, because like he has consequences for not telling her how he feels until the very end, like in their comedic consequences. But she can just drink more than Ozzy Osbourne and Lemmy combined, and she doesn't face any real consequences of it. Whereas I've known plenty of, heavy drinkers in my life, not the least of which are the two girls that I actually was with, romantically. Both of whom could drink very heavily. I've never touched a drop of alcohol in my life. Um, and this girl feels no symptoms of any kind of drunkenness or being sick or anything. She can just, it doesn't affect her. And I'm like, bullshit. And even among the people I knew who could hold their liquor pretty well, even they, felt something. So like that whole thing was just, I don't know, that didn't sit well with me, particularly in the context of, someone who's pining for someone else. And, just his thought process, reminded me of parts of myself that I am trying to eradicate because of how much they've hurt me in the past. And so, but I understand talking about Don Quixote, I understand that quixotic battle because he really does, think that this is his one shot and he's got to go for it. And he's laying down the plans of the
Mhm.
coincidences, the chance meetings, all that kind of stuff, which again, it's a trap that this guy's falling into that I myself have fallen into many times, trying not to fall into it again. The idea that you can somehow make love happen, and if only you engineer it the right way. And the reality is you can't. And so I was a little put off also by the fact that, oh, he does indeed get her the one book that resonates with her and does catch her interest and all that stuff. So his quixotic battle pays off, I guess, even though in real life it just doesn't work that way,
Well,
And in real life, again, you can't drink that much and not puke your guts out.
I believe that he also dealt with feelings of rejection,
Mhm.
especially in the very end, where he had contracted the same cold that everyone else had, and
Mhm.
all of that, and
Yeah.
the feelings of rejection. What some of these thoughts of like. I think there were thoughts of making money throughout the film.
Yeah.
That seems to be an important thing in this film, to make a profit of some sort.
Yeah, well, the idea that money can somehow buy love, buy happiness, and
Well,
it can't. Of course, that's one of the
and,
themes of
You
the
know,
thing.
and keep
and one
in mind
thing,
they are college students, and most
right,
of them at the time they're trying to think about their futures
Right.
and what's going to happen. But yeah, go
right.
ahead. I'll get into the main plot
Okay.
actually after that.
I just wanted to throw out one quick observation. Well, hope maybe quick. We'll see. That we were talking about the Western influences that one sees in this and certain other anime and whatever. And honestly, and again, Dane, I think I kind of get where you're coming from, but I find it really fascinating that, as I said, you poked your head out of the rabbit hole for this. This film to me has a strong Alice in Wonderland vibe because in many ways, Otome is kind of like the curiouser and curiouser sort of mentality,
Yeah.
just kind of going through from one adventure to the next. In many ways, Higuchi and Haneke could be like the Hare and the Hatter. They're her drinking buddies.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I asked Brandon before we went live. That's why I asked him
Right.
like why this one in particular, because again, the surreality factor of it, plus the fact
Right.
that I have been in Alice in Wonderland mode for so long, that wasn't
Right.
lost on me. I was looking for
Right.
specific parallels outside of just a general, this is a wacky, surreal
Mhm.
road trip. Outside of that, I didn't really see any like characters that matched up so much. And
Well,
I mean, I guess maybe Alice a little bit, but I didn't see like, because I asked myself that same question. The one guy with the weird chin, I was like, is he supposed to be the caterpillar or what?
he
But
will actually. He kind of rolls a bunch of them together. I was saying kind of him. I was saying him and Haneke were kind of like the Hatter and the Hare, but you're right. There's a bit of the caterpillar to him. There's a bit
mhm,
of Cheshire to him, and those two are regular characters in Tatami Galaxy, and they recur in the movie, and especially Higuchi. They call him the Master in the anime, in the series. To me, they do represent several of the crazy elements of that kind of rolled into one. And
yeah,
and you guys got me thinking about it when you were talking about how popular and how often the Japanese have come back to the Count of Monte Cristo. They come back to Alice in Wonderland a lot.
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah, I'm
There's
sure.
so many anime that have an Ellis episode. There's they come back to it a lot. So
yeah.
I provided Dane with quite a few of them.
Oh yeah, I know, and I'll be covering those not this
Right.
year, but probably next. But
good times.
yeah, it's I was watching it, kind of looking for that, just because my brain's been in that mode for so long. But yeah, I think it does
Mhm.
have themes that it's trying to get across, and I think it does so in a way that's certainly
Mhm.
unique and is high energy and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I think what got to me about it, again, besides the personal issues, which again is not the movie's fault in any way, I think also the fact that I did get the subbed version, it wasn't the dub, might not have been
Mm.
quite as obnoxious, but like having to read all that stuff very fast. And there's something about Japanese comedic deliveries of dialogue that combined with the frenetic energy, it just adds to the, amount. It's basically like trying to solve a puzzle while the puzzle pieces are moving really, really fast and you're under a time limit. That's kind of how it felt. Um, and
Yeah.
so it's like this is not really enjoyable. It's more annoying. And I would probably find this annoying even if it was dubbed. But it's just that was an additional hurdle to jump through. But again, the themes that it's trying to communicate, I think,
Mhm.
are universal. Do I would find it interesting if there are any kind of like cultural differences between the way that the Japanese would look at this versus the way we would, that kind of stuff. Because I hate
Mhm.
imposing my own kind of Western perspective on something that comes from a very different cultural context. I do think
Mhm.
I assume because a lot of their literary references, which I did appreciate, a lot of their literary references are Western books, like the
Mhm.
Count of Monte Cristo, like Don Quixote. Um, so I assume it's intended to be a little bit more universal. Um, but
Mhm.
I hate it, and I went into this blind again. I just hate, that feeling of like I know that there's a lot that I'm missing and I wish I knew what it was, that sort of thing.
But we're gonna go a
Mhm.
little bit more in depth.
Okay.
So,
I do want to say something too.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
The going back to what was said about the main character and her, that she kind of liked him when she got the book. If you notice, there was a scene right before that when she was talking about when he hugged her, that she really kind of felt something. Like every time she saw him, she thought of it being, oh, it's a coincidence that we see each other. She never really thought about it. But she seemed to be happy to see him every time. So maybe subconsciously she had thought about it and was happy to see him. And she obviously remembered him, and when she said about the hug, she did feel something there, and she just didn't even know what it was because, like she said, she's barely understanding her own feelings towards people, never mind thinking about anyone else's. Um, but then she started realizing, oh, this guy does have feelings for me, and she wasn't sure how she felt. And then when she got there and helped him out, and then he gave her the book. That was just kind of cemented her feelings, that he went out of his way to get this book of her childhood that she loved, in not only a copy, but the copy she actually had as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that just meant how she felt, but she was already thinking she had feelings. She just wasn't, she just didn't know exactly how she felt, but she was always happy to see him, and then with the hug and it all added together. Just she was, like everyone had said, she was too busy looking forward ahead and see what kind of experiences she can have. She just kind of missed out on the whole love experience.
Yeah. Well, it's just I do think the balance is a little uneven because he gets constantly kicked in the balls,
Oh yeah,
Well, that's a
metaphorically, and
Japanese trait for
yeah.
anime.
yeah. I
Well,
mean,
no, but like he
that could
gets
be like that actually can be like in real life, and I've known,
Oh yeah.
not necessarily like a girl that can drink and not get sick, but just like they kind of have an easier time sometimes I
Well,
know girls that are like that, and the guys are always having the worst time.
this film, in a lot of ways, is very leans heavily into the idea that opposites attract, because he is very much an introvert and she is very much an extrovert. She is an extremely gregarious person, and she's Crowley, you talked about how happy she is when she sees him. She's happy when she sees everybody. She is she is a very warm and open and gregarious person, and he is
true.
not.
I think she had a little special more. She was just like a little more happy to see him. I don't know. Just I got that vibe.
I guess. I mean,
got
like, what got me about this so much was that this guy, like, he sees her from afar and he's gonna work really, really hard to try to win her over. It's like the classic rom-com delusion that you can somehow work love into a being, and you can't. And that's, again, I believed that for so long, and it caused me a lot of pain, and pain I still feel that I'm trying to not want it anymore, because it just, again, it's too painful. But it's I know that feeling of like that quixotic battle of like, love is a fight, you have to fight for it to get it, and if only you overcome the quest and the this and the that, you can somehow win it. And it's like, you could, in real life, you could do all that shit and more, and it still wouldn't work. It just wouldn't, unless somehow she just clicked already. And even then, their explanation of it was a little bit weak or underdeveloped or whatever, because she just really did seem like a creature of the moment, of like the next drink, the next this, the next that. And I found that to be a profoundly unattractive trait in her. I did like her gregariousness just in general, but it's like to such a degree that I'm like, your kidneys are gonna be done in like tomorrow. They're gonna be done. So I found that to be a pretty unattractive trait, at least. But again, I'm bringing my own personal issues into it. But I do think that it's a problem with rom-coms as a genre, and I do think that this is very much in that mode, even though it's a surreal take on it. Just this idea that somehow love can be fought for and can be achieved, as opposed to something that just happens, because there doesn't appear to be much of a science to it, as much as some of us may want there to be more of like a cause and effect. There just doesn't seem to be.
From what I've seen so far of both Yuasa's work and the works based on Marimi's books, that both of them seem to play a lot with the idea of fate versus work, effort. Like how much happens because the universe wants it to happen, and how much happens because you get off your ass and do it. And and I think this film definitely plays with those ideas. Like there is a lot of that. Yes, he is working to make this happen, but I think a big part of the film's setup is that he's been sitting on the sidelines for a long time, accidentally running into her, but not really doing a damn thing. And so this is like actually getting off the sidelines and doing something is an important step in many cases.
Oh, it definitely is. So it's not. I'm not calling for the opposite of that by any means, because I've swung too far that way too, where I I'm too cowardly to do anything, that kind of stuff. It's more so that love is not this all powerful, all transformative thing. It just isn't. And this, everybody here quite literally gets the love bug in various forms, and it makes them do crazy things, and that's part of where the comedy comes from. And that's a rom-com trope. I think that I'm probably the wrong person to talk about that, just because of like, I've become rather averse to rom-coms in general, or even a lot of romance films, because again, I've had bad luck. But it's one of those things that I do think it is kind of a delusion. But I do like the idea of works versus fate, when it comes to like, ending up with someone. But again, a lot of people in this thing, they do subscribe to that whole idea of like the fated person that you're meant to be with and stuff, which again, I've tried my hardest to divorce myself from, because it is just a painful idea and a not terribly constructive one. So that's why I come at it kind of from a position of strong negativity, even though I do think that if you buy kind of what they're selling or what the rom-coms in general are selling, this one does have a lot about it that's praiseworthy, particularly in the realm of just batshit insanity. And I do love
It
batshit,
has that.
and I do love batshit insanity in films and in animation. This definitely has that. It's more what got to me was more so the fact that the batshit insanity was, I assume some of it I should know, to fully appreciate this thing. And the fact that I don't, it's like, well, that just makes me yet another ignorant American, and I don't like feeling that way.
Well, this film takes place. Basically, they I'll take the line. They did it all in one night. Is the most appropriate line I think that I could
Yeah.
throw from Dickens. But the concept is this is based off of a novel that takes place over a year, and then instead of a year, they fit it all into one night into 4 vignettes, each one representing a season. So I'm going to hit this one season at a time. I'm just going to run through each one of these, and once I finish, then we'll come back for comments. So bear with me. So the first one is just the initial night of drinking, where we start at the aftermath of a wedding, at the reception, where we're introduced to a lot of our characters. Our two main characters, the more carefree one, of course, our senpai, who has been meticulously doing a plan to accidentally, quotation marks, run into her enough to build that, familiarity, so that one day she will fall for him, which, wasn't really working all that well for him. You also have Don Underpants, who, of course, met his fated love and swore not to change his underwear until he finds her again. Which, of course, if he does, it would probably turn her right away afterwards. And they're kind of gathered together at this wedding, and she decides afterwards that, hey, I've enjoyed this. Let's just keep going. Let's make more of a night of it. And she goes bar hopping, essentially, and meets various characters along the way. Of course, two of which you've got our Tengu and his companion, and they give.
I would call these your old and young factions of the story, because on the one hand, you've got the Tengus, who are very young and still like versing themselves in, I would say, philosophy. Except they called it. What did they call it? Sophists.
And we'll definitely get to talking about that. I'm just going to rush through these last bits real quick.
Sorry.
But of course, part of this is also you run into one character who's come into very hard times, and another guy who runs in this 3-storied train that is stealing underwear through this weird underwear stealing ring. And this one guy is in debt so much that he's having to sell his artistic pornography collection.
Yes.
So between this and all of the various run-ins that they have, they're able to eventually stage a confrontation to where she challenges the man holding the debts and the underwear to a drinking contest
Rihaku.
to win the guy's freedom. And of course, the guy is also turns out to be the father of the bride. Now, this is a kind of a basic thing, and I wanted to throw one other theme out that took place in this that we did miss, and then I'll hand it back over for analysis of this part. But one thing that I thought in particular that I really loved was the showing of the passage of time, where they point out, okay, take a look at your watches, and you notice like the young girl's like she looks and she sees that her watch is moving very slowly. And of course, the adult age, they were moving a bit more quickly. And of course, theirs were moving very quick. And of course, when she confronts the other guy at the end, his move is moving at light speed.
Yeah, that was really great.
And I love that illustration because that is exact time is perception. And when you're young, time is perceived as slow. People are always like, I can't wait for this. I can't wait for that. As you get older, time moves faster and faster until it stops.
Well, and also because, as we said, she is living in the moment, so it makes sense that her watch would be running normal speed.
Yeah. That's how it is with most tour youth. It's just not as a,
Well, and it's also a good way to hopefully make up for the fact that this is a year's worth of story being compressed into one night, but it does achieve that larger goal of talking about that, it is ultimately their perception and their experiences of their existence, all that kind of stuff. And that was illustrated very well. That sets up that kind of that generational, kind of conflict that we see throughout the thing.
And you were talking, Dave, also. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure I got through that section before I came back.
Well, I was talking about the old and young factions because on the one hand, you've got the college like iniquities that evidently get together. Like, I would say, I would almost consider it kind of like a college hazing of thought processes going on, almost kind of like a college party of men who seem to have drinks, get together and socialize, but not just socialize, theorize, and the next group that she meets is a group of old guys who also kind of do the same thing. And she ended up going and reminding them through this dance that evidently that previous group had done how to enjoy life because they were so bored.
And they invented the dance.
Yeah.
So it shows that it was passed down. That it's the tradition still goes because they're in the same profession. And the one guy in the younger group party is going off to is leaving, and he has to leave his love, which is the woman who got married. So it's kind of over for him anyway.
Yeah, and actually, the married couple are kind of an amusing thing because the only time you see him semi-conscious is that first scene at the wedding, and every scene after that, she's literally dragging him along.
That was hilarious.
She's fully conscious, and he's red-faced and passed out. It's like, I found that kind of amusing. And of course, they show up. They kind of weave through the story and show up now and then. I love that first bar scene where, like, she, before she even meets Higuchi and Haneke, she meets the old man who I can't remember his name, and I'm wanting. Was that that wasn't Toto, was it? I
don't think so.
I can't remember for sure, but the collector of antique arts,
porn.
Yes. I loved the concept where he starts getting a little fresh with her, and then you just see this close up of a punch zooming in.
That was great.
He's sprawled out on the floor. I love her description of it as a friendly punch.
The friendly punch. I love later when she actually describes it, how she learned it from her mother and her mother, how her mother told her, you'll meet these kind of guys and you'll need to know the friendly punch. And
I believe that was actually where she turns around and the other two are there, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And again, these two a little more background on them may or may not be important for the movie, but in Tatami, he's an 8th-year student who was a classmate with her, and she is a dental hygienist, but she still takes a couple classes at the university. I think in this movie, it's probably a couple years later, and it's after his trip around the world, I'm sure. But they're he is a you get the sense in the movie, but he is a jack of all trades who tries very hard to do as little work as possible and just enjoy life. And he has a very strange way of enjoying life. So taking this young Kohai under his wing for a night of drinking and debauchery, it sounds about his speed. And she and he are kind of sort of a couple, but Haneke herself is a fun character who seems to be really... She's one that also can drink her weight in liquor, but you
Right.
see again, time passes differently for the different characters. You see her get a lot more affected than Otome does. And she, I think, was the first one to catch the disease from the older guy, which Dane actually had not thought of that as love sickness. I think
Me
you
neither.
had a good point there. I had not thought of it that way, but knowing now what I know about her from Tatami, it makes perfect sense that she was the first one to fall ill. So
Yeah, well,
that's
I don't know
yeah.
how one couldn't think of love sickness for the simple reason that, you know,
I was just thinking with sickness because it was the winter season,
Yeah.
but yeah.
well,
I
yeah,
was
but
gonna say-
also like people get
Yeah.
it in conjunction with
True.
the increasingly crazy things that love makes them do.
But
Right.
then wasn't the antidote for this thing something that was given to people who had tuberculosis?
Well, that's one of them, but then they mentioned the secret ingredient in Coca-Cola, and I was like, are they giving people cocaine? I mean, because that was used as a real remedy, and
Oh,
you
they're
know,
just
yeah,
trying
Yeah,
to
it
sell
was.
it.
That was
Yeah.
They're
strong
just trying to
Coca-Cola.
sell a drugs and alcohol.
well, yeah, but it's like if you take cocaine, yeah, you'll forget about your cold, but you know, it's gonna cause you a whole lot more. You know, if your kidneys aren't already gone from all the drinking, you know, why don't you start a
Yeah.
cocaine habit? That's a great idea.
If I remember correctly, I believe you're right. I think that was the traditional early use of cocaine was
It
as sort
was.
of a wonder drug, basically.
It was, and I mean, it takes plenty of those mild symptoms away by giving you worse
Oh yeah.
symptoms immediately.
yeah.
But
Won't help with the sniffles though.
that's for sure.
No.
But no, I felt like the love sickness thing to me was like I was like, this is either not at all what this is, or it's really painfully obvious. You know, like it. That's immediately what leapt to my mind. But I was like, it's so obvious that
Well,
I hope that I'm wrong. You know.
and the sickness also appears in the form of a tornado, which you do
Yeah.
see at the beginning where the guy talks about his koi being taken from him
Mhm.
by this
Mhm.
tornado. And
Now,
Which-
I did really like.
Go
There
ahead.
are also a couple of tie-ins there that you when you think about them, because koi also is I think it's written differently, but koi is also the word for love. So I think that's one clue there. And the
Yeah.
other thing is that again, a clue from the series that is the presence of that cowboy and his horse in that weird scene at the end.
Yeah, we'll cover
What's that?
we'll cover that a little later because I definitely
Yeah,
wanna dedicate a lot
basically
to that.
that's his mojo there. So yeah,
one
So
thing,
that's what Austin Powers was talking about all this time.
exactly.
Which I really liked. One thing I liked a lot about this was there was a theme of things falling on people's heads, whether it was fish or apples or
Right.
whatever the other thing was. Now I know that in one aspect of Japanese comedy and anime that I've seen, I remember it was on Yu Yu Hakusho a lot, was like a pan or a something falling from the sky and hitting someone in the head. Like I know
Yep.
that that's pretty common.
I would
But
think
but
that it
I'll
was cloudy with a chance of meatballs, but
well, but for me, it's
My
I
chest hairs
saw
are tingling.
well, what I got out of that, besides like that aspect of Japanese comedy, which I know is a traditional thing, it's also just basic slapstick, but it had a deeper thematic significance.
Oh, there it went.
It's the idea that things can happen that are extraordinary that we don't fully understand. They can come out of the blue, and maybe they don't have all that much intrinsic significance, but they do to us. And so we can often base our lives around those kinds of things. Like, fish falling from the sky, there's nothing intrinsically magical about that, but it was for him. And apples, same thing. They provided an explanation for it, but it was significant enough to where he radically changed his life. And the apple on the tree thing is just like Sir Isaac Newton, with a kind of a eureka moment. So that is another way to carry it forward. So like that, I really liked. And I mean, again, I'm no great expert when it comes to love in real life, but from everybody that has achieved it successfully, or achieve is probably the wrong word. There I go again. I'm trying to unlearn these things, but from everything I've ever heard from those who have experienced it for real, that it is something kind of inexplicable that can happen just out of the blue. And so that part, it's like, okay, I think that kind of furthers the theme rather than it can be achieved or something like that.
All right. So before we leave this section, Brittany, do you have anything to say about this first section of the film?
Well, I mean, it's kind of an interesting tradition in Japanese culture to do bar hopping. So I kind of, for the first part of the film, I didn't see it as all that obscure. I mean, it's very traditional, especially with companies to do this. That you start drinking at 8 o'clock at like night, and you will go on until about 2 o'clock, but you go from bar to bar to bar. So I mean, it's almost a tradition in Japan to do this sort of bar hopping situation. Um, I didn't pick up too much on the love angle until later in the film when I could technically read the subtitles, because the way I was is like really hard to read it at times. But I mean it's I mean, I'm trying to fit the proper words here. There's a lot of symbolism in this film. The time aspects we kind of covered a little bit of. The heading over the head. There's a bit of Asian culture where they don't like to be touched on the head. And whenever you see something like a character patting one on the head or something hitting them on the head, it is kind of like you're invading their personal space. So it's kind of an Asian culture element. And I learned this through someone I knew who came from an Asian family very much, and they're like, "Don't touch me on the head. It's very personal." So it was definitely interesting to see that throughout this film when you get like the fish hitting them in the head or the apples hitting them in the head. So I mean, it's symbolism in that sense that it's something's hitting me blatantly and striking my very core being is what it basically symbolizes.
Well, and thank you for telling us that, just because, like, again, I wouldn't harp on the culture thing so much if it wasn't the fact that comedy in general is so heavily culturally specific. Like there's a reason why American comedies tend to translate the best in, well, not surprisingly, other English speaking countries. And even then, there's a lot of stuff that like British people wouldn't get that, Canadians maybe would get, and vice versa. A lot of stuff in UK stuff that we don't get. And because so comedy is cultural, and then you throw in the animation factor, the surreality factor, and it's like, there's clearly a lot in this that I'm only scratching the surface of. or not grasping the full significance of. So any of those little tidbits that helps to fill in some of those gaps, because I thought I grasped a lot of things in this, or attempted to, as difficult as the movie made it for me to do, given how much shit was getting thrown at me every 5 minutes. But the stuff like that, it's like, yes, keep it coming. I want to fill in those gaps.
I think
Mhm.
I want to say I think it's actually funny that you say that it's a Japanese thing with the pat on the head. They hate that and stuff. I've always hated that myself. So to me, it felt personal. Like I was like, yeah, I agree with that crap. Like, don't pat me on the head. Like that's just like I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was a Japanese thing because it's a me thing, So I totally got that because that's how I feel. Like I've known people that like sometimes they pat me on the head and I just look at them like if looks could kill, they'd be dead on the floor.
Well, definitely one thing that's that I think is a pretty well known aspect of the culture is politeness and the way of not invade. It was, as Brittany said, invading their space or disrespecting them or whatever. Like the way that you address someone is huge. If you don't call someone Chan unless you damn well know them in most cases, or words like or a word like Anata you would use either to insult someone or with someone you're very close to. And Hanaki straight up says in Tatami that she drinks with people she's close to. That for her is sort of one of those space things. Like in this one, she's a little more open about it, but it seems to me like it comes from the same place. Like she won't drink with just anyone. So that's yeah. But that I don't think I'd ever heard that particular tidbit, so that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And two other things to note. One, when they're serving drinks, and this is really an odd moment that kind of stuck out. Typically, the younger is supposed to serve the older. And we have that one scene where she is being served all that wine by the older gentlemen who are at the party and whatnot. And so it's a very rare moment to see that because usually it's the younger has to fulfill the older. It's a drinking respect. Another thing to note: this is in Kyoto. This entire series or film takes place in Kyoto, and we have that the old man, I forget his name, but the very old man he rides around in a Rengoku, I believe, boat, which is
Rihaku, I think, is the old
Rihaku.
man.
Okay, Rihaku. But yeah, this decorative, elaborate boat going up and down the canal, which is just a very sort of odd thing you wouldn't really see in nowadays, but it's a very traditional thing. So it kind of gives you a sense of his formality, his age, that he has this elaborate boat basically floating down these narrow passages.
Yeah, this definitely had a kind of college town vibe to it. And I assume there are probably plenty of
Well,
universities
they're
in
college
Kyoto.
students. The main characters are.
Yeah. Well, but like even just the characterization of the town, the people that they interact with, where they frequent, all that stuff. Like, I think that part was pretty universal. And even then, it's like they frequent markets or they look for used books and stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm familiar with that. I remember that from that age.
I remember something you said, Jacob, about the about koi and that. But keep in mind when you talk about Japanese humor, Japanese love word humor, and something that us as Americans have a harder time getting unless you know Japanese.
Right.
But it's more than likely that yes, the koi were definitely symbolizing koi as in love for that as well. It would be no doubt because that just goes along because again they sound alike. Therefore, hey, funny coincidence. Koi, love.
Well,
When
they
I
also mean
think,
one other thing.
well, go ahead.
Go ahead. Koi mean good fortune. A lot.
Right.
And we also get another version of the good fortune with the dolls that we kind of see
Yeah.
I forget what they're
The Druma dolls.
Doma
Yeah.
dolls.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
also a sense of good fortune. Now, usually
Mhm.
you don't see both eyes colored in. You usually see one colored in.
Mhm.
So it's kind of interesting. We're seeing two colored in.
And one other aspect I'm just going to leave this with, and then I'll ask if there's anything else before we move on. One thing, and of course, I was not a drinker for the most part. In college, I didn't drink hardly at all, and I had alcoholism throughout my family, and I was very much against it. I don't drink all that. Yes, cat. I don't drink all that heavily now, but there are times where I've gotten to really understand some of the nuances of the bar hopping. Like one thing that's just sometimes the things that you can see, and I don't really like a lot of the loud, noisy places because I don't like loud, noisy places. But when you get to a fairly quiet place where you have a few people and they're having a conversation, and people are able to strike up conversations with each other, there's something kind of whimsical about that. When they're sitting there talking about that special alcohol
Yeah.
that she gets to try later, which of course that may have been just as much a motivation for her to enter the drinking contest. It just is there. I also find it interesting about the whole underwear stealing deal. I mean, these underwear bandits that are going around.
It's usually the other way around. It's usually the females that get their underwear stolen, not the males.
Appleside would be very much against this guy.
I'll go ahead and say as far as
wrong.
the what you were just touching on, I can speak to quite a lot of the what the experience shown in this film, the college age, the bar hopping, the drinking. I've been, a lot of this is like I've been there, so I haven't done nearly to the level that they do here, not remotely, but I definitely can. I can relate in a lot of ways, and to me, that does almost gives it a bit of a nostalgic vibe in some of those early scenes. There is a lot of truth to some of the randomness of the encounters, the ways that sometimes you will get people who'd never met before who just kind of band together and do stuff. It's interesting to see it in action.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because again, I have known a lot of people that were heavy drinkers. I've known a surprising amount of them, having never touched a drop of alcohol in my life, and I never would because I've seen it destroy too many people. And that's another
I've
thing. I
seen
was
that
like,
too.
yeah, and I was also, but like people that I loved, like my last, two girlfriends, they were heavy drinkers, and I would never do that again because it was not fun. And again, I look at this person and I'm like, so she's kind of portrayed as like the girl that you, lonely guy, should presumably want. And I'm like, well, from experience, I'm like, no, you fucking don't. You don't want someone like this because that's not going to end well for you
She can
or
drink
her.
anyone under the table. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's not going to do her any
She's,
favors. Not going to.
she's like that Indiana Jones girl in the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
But that's a
Marin,
comedic element
yeah,
that you
she's
see.
definitely a Marin.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that small girl who can outdrink the giant guy, or the ones like that have the tremendous appetites that can outeat almost anybody. It's something that's a theme that you see recurrent a lot through Japanese stuff.
Yeah.
It's more of a comedic thing. Like that person shouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah, but
And I guess
other...
if we do think about it, is that technically it's sort of like a year is being covered in a night. You could look at it as it's a year's worth of drinking happening in one night. So if you look at it as like she's kind of going through all this time, even though she's not, it's one of the fantasy elements of the film that's kind of like, I just run with it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not so much that I was thinking, it's unrealistic or anything. It's just more of that vague sense of, well, they kind of glorify drinking a shitload of alcohol.
Yeah. Well, it
And-
wasn't so much for me, like, because I did complain a little bit about the realism factor, but I keep in mind I'm grading that on a curve because nothing about this is realistic in any kind of
Exactly.
literal sense. This is very much a fantasy, and it uses a lot of kind of cartoony logic, and nobody, when they eat spicy food, nobody's lips grow to that size and all that stuff. So again, I'm grading it on a curve here, but still.
Hey, if you have an allergy, you might get those lips this size.
Well,
Maybe, yeah.
Well, but my point
Like in
is,
Hutch.
like, I'm speaking about it more in terms of like a
Yeah.
character trait rather than more than anything else. Even though, again, anybody that I don't care how good of a drinker you are, there's no way you could walk in a straight line and
Right.
form a coherent sentence.
Yeah, no.
And
I know a lot of people that
Mhm.
can drink a lot, but yeah, no. I mean, I used to be able to drink a lot. A
But
couple
again,
times that I
I'm
did drink,
grading it
but-
on a curve
Yeah.
here, so keep that in mind.
in all fairness, she pretty much stops drinking after this section.
Yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
But any other things about this section before we move on to part 2?
Well, the one character that I kind of liked, even though he wasn't really that likable, was the one guy who did collect the pornography, mostly because,
Yeah.
well, he was pathetic, but he was, again, he was portrayed as pathetic, and everyone called him pathetic, and it's like, well, that's correct, because again, I don't like it. One of the things I hate about romantic comedies or comedies in general is when characters do a lot of despicable things and the movie doesn't call them out on it, like our leading lady here, is you can't just drink that heavily and not expect to have consequences for it long term. So like that did bother me. Like this guy, yeah, he's pathetic, but the movie frames him as pathetic. But that being said, he's not wholly unsympathetic in that what he wants is a life of meaning. He wants a life of, like he's made a lot of mistakes in his life, all that stuff. And what he wants is not unreasonable. He's just going about it in a bad way. But the part that I didn't really laugh at this movie, except for I did find it really funny when he was doing the hand on the shoulder motion that then turns into hand on the waist and it turns into the hand on the boob,
Yeah.
and but she punches him with the sound effect for the punch was really good in that it wasn't like a sound effect I've heard a million times. It actually sounded like, you remember in Pokemon when the Pokeball hits the ground, not the actual Pokemon coming out of the ball sound, but like the actual impact sound.
No, never seen it.
It sounded like
Oh.
that actually.
Sound.
Yeah, it's, well, the Pokeball sound I think is actually at least two sounds in one, but the actual punching sound sounded like the sound that the Pokeball makes when it hits the ground. But I just appreciated that it was not the typical punching sound that you hear.
I thought it was enjoyable.
I
though.
like that, and I also like the sound. I think it was like a slide piano sound when his fingers move down, and like that, and the fact that they use the same voice clips for both of them, on repeat. As he's moving his hand down and stuff. I was like, that's well done. Um, but yeah, like I did like the fact that his character was framed as pathetic, but he himself did get something of a redemptive arc, even if it was a minor one.
And the girl liked his philosophy, even though she didn't like his trying to grope her.
She bore him no ill will throughout the whole.
No,
That's
she
why,
even
again,
felt bad after she punched him too.
Yeah,
And her new friends told him, "Oh, don't worry about he deserved it. Punch him harder next time, But she felt bad for doing it. But it was just
That was
kind of more of
just
it was
saying
a more
that.
of a reaction thing when she felt his hand on her breast, just boom,
Having dealt with people like that in my own personal life, he did come off creepy. I gave him. He's probably my least favorite character in this film entirely. The only thing I'll give him credit for is having some lovely ukiyo-e,
yeah.
which is the drawings he's got.
Oh yeah.
Well, and that's the key thing there is the framing. I think that they framed him as pathetic and creepy and all that kind of stuff. And he I think again, I have to say with her, it's like, yeah, and again, trying not to judge this too much based on realism, but I was also same kind of thing with what you said. Yeah, in real life, every woman I can think of, they would, run the other way, or they would, hate the guy for the rest of their lives, or whatever. So,
Yeah.
that's just in my experience.
I want to say another thing. What was I thinking? Go ahead. Someone else talk. I can't think.
I was gonna say I'm gonna try and move on, but did you have anything else you wanted to say before we move on?
I was just I was saying that. Oh yeah. I ain't feeling like he was all that creepy until, he goes, "You remind me of of my daughter."
Yeah.
And then he does the whole shoulder blah 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 to the breast thing. I'm like, wait, she reminds you of your daughter, but you're groping her. That's creepy and sick,
Oh, of course. Well, and that's also why it's funny that he does get punched in that.
I mean, it is, but it was just that moment. The thought in my mind was, that's creepy. Like the second he did that, it reminded me, like 2 seconds ago he was saying that she reminded him of his daughter. So that's why it felt creepy to me. I mean, before that, I don't think he was just talking to her. He was talking to her as an older guy would talk to a girl. He wasn't really hitting on her. He was just talking to her, and then, he did his thing and got punched out for it.
And I thought it was kind of funny that when they were calling him out on it, they referred to him as being part of a society of bedroom.
Yeah.
A thing like he was a bedroom pervert of some sort.
Right.
Which that's what a lot of people resort to, I think, when they don't. This shows a lot of like what happens when people don't get love, or like in our hero's case, he's on this quixotic battle. Other people, their time has passed, so they collect a lot of pornography in the guise of it being artistic and all that stuff. And I did love, you can tell that this is Japanese in the sense that the genitals are censored, it's just very, very common. But that's what a lot of what people do when they don't get love is they, find anything else they can that's kind of sort of approximating it. And with him, it wasn't just that, it was that plus like all the other bad things that happened in his life and that kind of stuff. And so this did show kind of this larger community of people that do various things when they do or don't get love.
Well, we're going to definitely charge forward a little bit. So in section 2, I call this the book section, because she just strikes in her head. Oh, I want to read that book again I had as a child. So they go to this book fair, and all these used books that are being peddled at the fair. And of course, we also get introduced to the school president there, who is kind of running all the security at the school. And he is friends with our senpai here. And senpai, and
you're talking about the dude in purple? I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
Now, he was introduced at the beginning.
Well, we get more of an introduction to his ability and his status. I do like that he has a chimpanzee with a talking parrot as his
those characters appeared on screen again, this was like the 50 millionth what the fuck thing that appeared on the screen. But then
I was thinking he was a flying monkey.
Well, when that happened, I was seriously, again, I said it for the 50 millionth time. I was like, what the fuck am I watching? And why am I watching it? But I was like, this movie expects me to buy a lot. That's all. It's throwing so much at me that it's
surprisingly, I didn't say that.
Well, but it's like, it's expecting me to buy so much. And not the least of which are like gods of books and gods of this and that.
That was funny.
But I was like, oh, okay, so those exist in this world, I guess. Okay.
Well, speaking of, when they get to the book fair, they are, of course, there's this black market, which is essentially a lot of the stuff that we end up dealing with in collecting with scalpers and those who they or even resellers to a point where they go in, they purposely buy out as much as they can of the rare books, and then they sell them for premium. Or in this case, they make them eat extremely spicy food until the last one standing gets the book, which is a very
I
weird.
feel like this is a knock against scalpers because
Oh yeah,
that
definitely.
that god dude is there to go and knock up
No.
the prices on shit so that the highest buyer can buy it. You
Now the
know?
god of now the god that they have there is a this kid who goes in and is trying to bring the books back to the book fair to sell for fair prices.
And that kid was
Jacob,
freaky looking.
He's like
Yeah,
Avatar
yes.
Airbender on crack.
What's up? What's up?
I had a question for
You
you.
look
Now,
like a
of course,
vampire.
you watched Tatami Galaxy shortly
Yeah.
after. Of course, I don't know if you noticed the one cameo that they had on the security screen of the asshole friend from Tatami Galaxy who was there with the
Oz?
sharp teeth. But also, wasn't the kid? Did the kid resemble that guy as well?
He
I-
reminded me of Oz. I was wondering if he was like maybe his little brother or a cousin or something.
I think they used as a kind of a. I was trying to read about the cameos back and forth. I thought that, so I just wanted to check with you on that. But
Yeah.
I'm leaving it's simplistic like that, just as the basic plot line. Other than,
I
of
did
course,
like-
the kid also sticking an ice cream cone in a very awkward place.
Yeah.
Guy who just managed to finally
Twice.
get his underwear and pants
More
back.
than once, yes.
Yeah.
I did like his practice, the kids' practice of knocking off the prices and whatever, trying to create a level playing field at the book fair. I
Right.
thought that was kind of fun. And it was,
And his reasoning for it was cool too.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
that kid terrified me. Like I really was scared of him. I was like,
It did
what
look like
are-
a little vampire though.
Yeah, I was like, what
Yeah.
are you? And then, well, once they explained he was a god, I was like, oh, no wonder he was so
Well,
freaky.
okay, this is part of the what Brandon was just asking me. This character Oz is frequently referred to as
He's like
a
cute
creature
on
from
his
the
wings.
dark side of the moon and all kinds of other unsavory things. And
Yeah, no
I think
shit.
yeah,
Well, now I agree with the group. I did really like it. As freaky as he was, I did like his reasoning of like all books are connected and all that stuff. Like, and that is true. It's absolutely true that literature does build on itself over time. I really like that. Again, it's thrown at me a million miles an hour, but like
Yeah.
that sentiment though, I thought was really good, and it was out of all the things that are thrown at you a million miles an hour, that one was done, I think, for a pretty good effect, because it does show that literature and books and ideas and stuff, they do form a web.
And they're all connected.
Exactly. So that was handled well. And so as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, now I get this creature's deal. Because again, he just appears and he's got this weird voice. So like again, in the original Japanese, the voice they pick for him is a kind of deliberately odd. I assume it's an adult doing that voice, but it's one that kind of sounds like an adult, but in the body of a child. And it's got the weird teeth, and he's just got this freaky eyes and stuff, and he acts weird. And I'm like, yeah, you are coming right out of my nightmares, and you're not going anywhere soon.
I didn't find him scary at all. I thought he was weird looking. And like I said, he reminded me of kind of like a vampire.
Well, it also didn't help that was juxtaposed with the other thing, which looked like they were going into hell itself to eat the spicy food to get the books back and all that.
That was great.
Again, that was another, what the fuck am I watching? That moment. But again, I was like, okay, we've officially entered hell. Great.
Like I said, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I totally wasn't expecting to, but I try to keep my mind as open as I possibly can.
Yeah, jumbo lips.
I mean, when I put it on and it was just Japanese, part of my head was thinking, good, I got a good excuse not to watch this. And the other part said, come on, you got to try to find an English copy or something. And You know, that's when Mo told me he's on HBO Max, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because I was looking all over the place, and I was like, I can't find it. I couldn't find it on any of my sites that I watch stuff on, and you know, I just could not find anything that was in the English version. You know, and I don't understand. As much as I hate to read a movie, I'm definitely hands down not gonna watch a movie in a language I don't understand. It's not gonna happen.
Well, it didn't help that I was getting stuff thrown at me a million miles an hour and having to
Oh,
read it.
I'm
And
sure I might not have enjoyed it as
Yeah.
much if I had to read it, because I definitely hate doing that. So
well, and the original Japanese voice actors were doing it in a particularly annoying way, but you know, it's
that's another thing I don't like about anime is like the way they talk, like the sound sometimes. Yeah,
that depends on the actor, but still, like I think
they do that a
across
lot.
across the board, this one was more on the annoying side. But you know, it's we see the spicy food thing. I did one thing that was kind of an odd, but I actually didn't mind it. Artistic choice was when people swallow something that their throats get like frog sized. You know,
That actually
Mhm.
annoyed the hell out of me when I first saw it. Like that it was almost the very first scene I saw.
yeah,
And I was
that's like the first shot, actually. I
yeah,
think.
exactly. So you see it like that was even the Japanese version. The first thing I saw, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be one of those.
Yeah,
It was just
that's
kinda
what
like-
I said.
that annoyed me.
But I got used to that actually
Yeah,
over
it actually
time.
didn't bother me after the first time. The first time it bothered me, and after.
Yeah.
But that first guy, when he was like, I don't know, he was just had like tears in his eyes or something popping down, and all these things in the background blasting and stuff. I mean, his story was funny, but that's what I meant by overacting. It wasn't acting, but the scenery was way overdone. Like is how I felt they did it. You know, that was pretty much the only really issues I had with the. I mean, the anime style itself wasn't that bad. It wasn't too outrageous. It was a little more plain than I expected, but it wasn't definitely, which I think is better than the outrageous. I mean, even with the demon and stuff, you knew it was demons, and I thought they did a good job with that. I actually enjoyed that. You know, I love animation. I love American, Western animation. Not all of it, but I love a lot of it. So it's not like I don't love the animation and stuff. I just usually don't like the Japanese, the way they do it. The anime. So I thought this one was done pretty decently.
How about you, Brittany? Did you have any takes on the book section?
Well, I mean, a lot of the titles were pretty common titles that Japanese like, including the English titles. So they're fairly common stories that you would hear referenced in a lot of anime. And then you have the giant pot of udon, which is I don't know, or Odin, excuse me. A lot of people who in America probably don't know what it is, but it's basically a big stew pot. And it's traditionally eaten in the winter to fall months. And I've done it myself. It's basically just keep putting more crap in this stew pot and just eat it.
Probably not this spice level.
No, not this. Well, not this big. Well, people love it spicy. Some people love putting a lot of spice into them. And it's to each person's taste. But you will traditionally see it throughout anime or even video games when they have a big pot of Odin. You'll see those big lips that they're talking about because you serve it boiling hot, and you just eat each piece of whatever you want from it, and it's a group thing. So I mean, seeing that and getting a little bit of sense of hell is I mean, it's a traditional Japanese concept, especially in anime that you run across every now. And then One Piece has done it recently with a character named Odin. So I mean, it's you sort of see this combination of hell and this pot. So you get this little sort of hellish scene within this part of the story.
Yeah, and thank you for that. That helps.
Is it just me? I mean, again, I kind of somewhat rooted for Senpai throughout it. Just the idea is like he earned the book And I was glad to find that he held on to it enough that even though he was basically knocked out so badly that he had a ditch in the ground behind him, that he still held on to the book. I was glad that he got to keep hold of the book.
Right. I thought he was going to lose it. It was. I definitely know that plight of seeing a girl you want and working everything you can to make love happen, and it not working out. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, that's I felt kind of bad for him, but I
Yeah.
also it was more like this is a part of me that I don't really want to think about, even though it's kind of the focus of the thing. But
Yeah.
it's like love is something that you want to make happen, and
you can't.
you can, and also it's like you can, in our quest to do so, we end up really putting ourselves in a bad place,
Oh
bad
yeah.
situation. And it's like, if again, not to be harping on realism or anything, but I was like, in real life, if this person did any number of those things, 99.999% of the time, it would result in, nothing, not the desired outcome, I don't
Right.
think.
Oh yeah. I mean, only in the movies that stuff like this really happens. I mean, like they've always said, you find love when you're not looking for it. So obviously,
Yeah.
you're trying to make it happen. And you are looking for it. I mean, I used to say, well, I want it, so I'm looking for it. How can I not look for it when I want to look for it? It's like I couldn't understand that when I was younger at all. It was just such a paradox to me that, and
So, let's move on a little bit further. This section is not. Thank goodness this section has some. Okay, cat.
you want to
Section,
put your 2 cents in.
he apparently he wanted to say something too,
Yeah.
but
Was that Anderson?
that was Fu.
Oh, okay.
But essentially, the third part really plays right into this, which is the guerrilla theater. And I love that. Like, you got a theater troupe that just sets up randomly throughout, and they keep
Right.
going through each parts of this
Well,
play,
they
the
try to settle
Conjure of
down,
Monte
so-
Cristo, where they're doing musical sections. Meanwhile, the student president is trying to hunt them down. He's trying to recruit senpai to help him with it because they're doing this against school rules.
Well, this also is the another staple of anime, the festival, which is
Yeah.
big
And-
thing there.
And again,
gets,
pardon my ignorance. Maybe people can help me. So, guerrilla theater, is that a thing? Is that a real thing that happens?
Not really.
Not to the level they did that.
You may have occasionally a group go out and sort of do performances, but more often you'll have it. This was 2017, correct?
Yes.
This is when this movie was made. So that's around sort of still the coming of the sort of what was it? The groups that would get together and just have a dance musical number out in the middle of nowhere.
I thought flash mobs. I
flash
thought were
mob,
some
yeah.
time
Flash
before
mobs, yeah.
that.
But I mean, it follows along that same concept. It's not traditional Japan. Usually, it would be frowned upon to do something like this in Japanese culture.
Right.
Well, obviously it was because they
Yeah,
were chasing them around.
Yeah,
Well-
I would think so. I mean, I think it would probably be frowned upon here too. I just, again, I felt like there was so much in this movie that I was like, I swear I'm not an idiot. I swear I'm not. But I want to make sure that I'm grasping what all the movie's trying to throw at me.
Well, especially when the the security chief, I guess for lack of a better term, just finally connects the dots and realizes that both of the pains in his ass from that evening are related, because he's also chasing the running kotatsu, which features our dear friend Higuchi and also Don Pence, because I think Hanuki at this point has gotten sick and gone home from being sick. And so Higuchi is teamed up with Don Pence. And so they're just chilling at a Kotatsu with the Don typing away at his keyboard, and our senpai finds them and hangs out for a bit, and then they just get up and run to a new place, and and eventually come to find out that they're leaving a little Daruma doll behind them, and the Guerrilla Theater is using that to decide where to set up. And I just thought overall that was kind of an amusing little setup that they had there.
I would
talking
love to have a
about-
Kotatsu like that.
You talking about the guys underground? I called them the Incel Brigade because they were spying on people, and I was like, "Oh Jesus,
Oh yeah.
this is what incels wish they could do."
I mean, one of the things that they were trying to do with this, of course, was he was trying to find this person that he had this connection with. And I thought, one thing I thought was, and of course, our woman in black with black hair, she gets caught up in this whole deal, as she does. And, it's, we were talking about things that this and themes this movie has. And one of the things I thought was interesting is that though the movie kind of speaks to, the fated lovers and things like that, but it also kind of makes fun of fate as well. It looks at this and says, well, no, the person that you're actually in love with was actually the council president dressed up as a woman for something else.
Funny thing
And
is, he
then
didn't care.
And that part was very amusing.
Koi hit him and the other woman who loved him in the head, and then he's on with that. And then, in a way, I think that kind of dashes that whole idea of, oh look, it's fate. Oh look, it happened again. It's kind of silly. It looks at that as kind of a silly thing. Now, maybe I'm running a little bit too far with that, but that's how I look at it. It's not just.
I saw the same.
about
I saw the
but
same thing. You
laughing at it as
said,
well.
like
could
he
see
was
that.
like she was pouring her heart out to him, and he was just basically like, well, I'm sorry, but fate has allotted me with this one, even if it's a guy or whatever. I don't care until the fish did it again, and then he realized, oh, maybe it is supposed to be you now, and so
Yeah.
he was just following whatever he thinks is fate, and not following even this girl is she's pretty decent looking and not bad looking. I mean, she seemed okay. She looks kind of smart and everything, and she's pouring her heart out to him, and he's basically just overlooking her completely until the fish dropped on both their heads, and then he realized, oh, maybe I'm the one I'm fated for.
And that's a fair point about the kind of making fun of the idea of destiny, that it didn't really matter who it was ultimately, that he would have gone for a guy dressed up as a girl, and that would have been fine if it was what the fates aligned for him. That whole thing, because that you could easily read as a good send up of that idea.
Whereas if you're thinking about logically and in realistic terms, a girl, a cute one at that, who sings up and sings a love song to him in front of a crowd, even though he hasn't changed his underwear in a year,
Right.
it might be a keeper, I guess.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, the whole underpants thing, to me, at least for me, the joke kind of wore thin the longer that it went on. And also because I'm like, this guy must stink.
Much like his underwear, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's like, this guy must smell so bad.
Well, he did say he wasn't going to get under the Kotatsu because
And he's a rather swarthy fellow to begin with.
I was gonna say, like,
Yeah.
he must have so much ass sweat. Holy shit!
Those are going to be crusty underwear.
Jeez.
I mean, to be fair, he didn't need to take a shower or anything. He just didn't change it.
Okay.
So he could take them off and then put them back on. So at least the underwear is fucking horrid, but at least he took a shower. So
I think the as far as the idea of poking fun at fate too, the lyrics of the songs that they sing in this musical are I just thought these were the greatest songs ever because they were so bad.
Yeah, which
Well,
Well, I
again,
mean, it's a flash play, and you're making up the
Right.
songs on the go.
Yeah.
and again, I
I
think
like the
that would
costumes
be
as well.
that would be an interesting dub versus sub debate there. Because again, I'm trying to hear the
I have
song
to
but
hear what
also
the
read
dub
it.
is.
Yeah, I was trying to hear the song and read it, and and again, there's a lot of shit being thrown at me at the in this movie, and but like, yeah, that could definitely be an interesting point of comparison there.
Yeah, I didn't feel like there was. I mean, there was definitely a lot going on, but I didn't feel like it was too much. But again, if I had to read it, I would probably feel the same way.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else on the whole guerrilla theater section?
I,
I know
I thought
Dave.
I thought it was great, and the guy he finally decided that I got to make a move instead of just kind of waiting for things to happen, which I mean, I guess what he did could work, because he like flew down on the on the thing and went through literal fire and stuff and landed there and you know and just kind of took her in his arms and was hugging her and he was about to kiss her. Unfortunately, that got interrupted, but she wasn't like pulling away or anything. She just kind of she had accepted she was going to do a love scene, but it was technically supposed to be with the other one.
Well,
But
and I think that was kind of a valiant scene right there.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of cool
exactly.
that he actually
I,
took
I
the hard
enjoyed
bullet.
that, and actually felt like he was finally realizing that you can't just sit in the back and hope for things to happen. You gotta make you move at least. You know, so
which again, I think that's correct. I think the counter argument is that you can do all these like outrageous heroic
oh
things,
yeah,
and
and
yet
it not work out, but
yeah,
you have to stick your neck out there
Yeah.
yeah,
to get anywhere because they're not gonna, most times the girl's not gonna come up to you.
Yeah,
yeah.
and
I
Well,
mean,
not only that,
now
but
there's
I
a
guess
little
really
more that
leaked
could
anything.
happen, but
well, I
it's
guess
still
that's the other part of it also is the because you had the people who thought that it was all fate, and they were just as ridiculous, just in a different way. Um,
yeah.
so that's a fair criticism there. It's just it was more so that what I observed was I was like, yeah, this guy is trying to climb Mount Everest only to find that there's no gold at the top, because
Right.
I didn't, because again, I did not think that this girl was. Now if this girl, if I felt like she was a real catch or was like worth it or whatever, then I would have been perhaps a little less critical, or I would have
I
maybe
don't know.
understood.
She's kind of it's strange. It's like she's a super nice person, which totally I get why someone would want to be with.
A free spirit.
Yeah, exactly. The drinking part, I agree with that. That someone drinks that much, that's way too much. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
a one-time thing, a one-night thing, I mean, it still was way too much. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but if it's something that would be like all the time and that bad, then yeah, there's definitely not someone. But they never really said. I think they did mention that was her first time drinking,
Which
so
that
it could
I don't buy that at
it
all.
could. Well, right, but everything was obviously exaggerated for the film.
I don't believe that at all. I don't
But
think you could
if
be
it
that
was her
way.
first time, it could mean that she won't really do it again, or she might do it a little bit, not like that. She kind of went crazy the first time, which
Yeah.
I
Right.
drank kind of a lot my first time, and obviously nothing to those degrees. But I mean, I could see how they did it and then just over exaggerated it. So she could have a lot of good qualities. I mean, she seemed like she had a lot of great qualities besides the drinking. And again, that could have just been that one time thing. So
Yeah, and again, I could be letting my bias show with
yeah,
that part of
exactly.
it, but
Which
also
I
because
totally get. I mean,
but also because like her kindness or whatever, I didn't really see a lot of kindness. I saw a lot of like, to me, she came across as very superficial, like not malicious or anything, but like again, nothing that I personally would ever want to like do
Yeah,
half that
I
shit.
didn't feel that way at all. I felt she was very kind and she was trying to help everyone that was sick and you know
Yeah, but I mean,
and then she helped those old people by showing them that life can be fun and here's this dance that I've learned and find out they invented it and which I think that dance was hilarious.
yeah,
I must
I
say.
guess she would have to be I have a higher standard for like if I were to do that kind of crazy shit, I wouldn't do it for just anybody. And I felt like she didn't again, I'm letting my bias show. So,
Right.
whatever whatever floats his boat,
I
clearly.
think I saw what he saw. I think I see
Yeah.
what he saw in her.
Right.
I mean, you can't choose who you fall
Everyone's got
for
their own
either.
kick.
Even
Yeah, I
if
was,
even if it's someone you necessarily wouldn't fall for, if you fall for them, you fall for them. It's you can't choose it. You don't choose
yeah.
it at all. You
Well,
just don't.
and obviously it doesn't really matter what I think. It's the character, is head over heels for her. So, that's I'm
Yeah,
trying to I'm trying to put myself in his headspace, and I get the intention, which is opposites attract.
yeah, that
I
too.
just I know for, myself, it's like I've gone to some pretty serious lengths for people, and,
Me too.
nowadays I'm trying to have a higher standard of that. And normally I wouldn't, do that much for just anybody, but I don't know, letting my bias show. But anyway,
Dave,
I
I know
get it.
you had some things that you had wanted to say about this particular section because of the play, the Conjure of Monte Cristo, and some of the relations. So I wanted to make sure I gave you a chance.
Well, I feel like, well, anyone who knows anything about the Count of Monte Cristo, um, that's a story about revenge, and I'm not sure where they were going with that angle, because it wasn't that he was trying to get revenge; he was trying to reveal who his true love was, and that's why um, I thought that they were kind of going on a Don Quixote, almost Cyrano de Bergerac.
Sarah, no.
de
Whatever.
Bergerac.
Yep.
Well, yeah, actually, the Count of Monte Cristo thing. I mean, that's also a story of someone who pretends to be someone else in order to go about one's stated goal, which in that story is revenge.
Hmm.
But so I mean, you could think of it that way, that this is, and they're calling it a codger. And a codger is someone who's I guess, like an older cranky person. So again, it's kind of that idea of like the old who haven't taken a chance at life, and young people who are taking chances at life, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the school guy having something against the codger of uh, Monte Cristo, um, uh, and the whole fact that it came out as like a cross dresser, and he ended up being like the woman that the apples fell on at the same time as him. It was like, yeah, that's. I'm not entirely sure I was entirely buying that, but
Yeah,
um, like
Well,
you said, Dane, there was so much that they were trying to get us to buy for a storyline. It's like, can't you just stick with like one
yeah,
simple thing and then run with it?
yeah.
No.
And again, I wouldn't have been nearly so critical if there wasn't so much of it and it came at me so fast, and it's just a lot to not only process but accept at the same time. Plus the fact that, again, thematically, it touches on things that are very painful for me personally. So it's like it was a very bad combination of things, and again, it wasn't the movie's fault for doing that.
one heck of a night, that's for sure.
Yes, that's for sure.
One long
Yep.
should have been called one long night.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
do like how now I know that it's based on other thing that's supposed to be a year's worth, it's funnier that they kept saying that one night that felt like a year. Like they kept saying that, so they kept referencing the fact that it was supposed to be a year. And I thought that was funny, not knowing that. Now knowing that, I think it's even funnier. So,
Yeah.
I think it was cool how they referenced it, that it was supposed to be a year, and they turned it into one night, type thing.
Well, and you could argue that the title is kind of a pun because it's the night
Yeah.
is short, and yet the night is deliberately structured to feel long.
Yeah. Well,
But
the guy
also,
says it to her once. It says
Yes.
that saying to her. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's where they got the title from.
yeah,
You
well,
know,
but
I
then
thought that was kinda
also,
neat.
the second part of it, walk on, girl, meaning that
Keep going.
you only have a short time to live on this earth, so try to
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
your life, all that kind
Enjoy
of
it the
stuff.
way you're enjoying it and all. So
Oh,
it's kind of a good,
that kind of
kind of a
makes
good
me.
message.
Kind of makes me remember the part where the old guy, the old faction, asked her about the watch and how their
Mhm.
watch went
Oh,
so
that was
fast
a
and
good
hers
part. I
went
like
so
that part
slow.
Exactly.
actually.
Yeah, we covered that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that part myself. You know,
And
showing her
Well,
the
the
woman.
part where he says the title, I think, is in the upcoming
Yeah,
sequence
in the
that
next section.
where
that
she
really
goes to visit
starts it
him, I
off.
believe.
But
Yeah.
I did want to go back, and of course, Jacob, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're more familiar with the novel than I am.
Barely.
Each part of this represents a season, whereas the
Right.
first part being spring, where you got you've got the whole marriage that started like starting out in life, and you've got the book part during summertime, which actually that reflects a lot, and of course a lot of these book fairs are during those times. Then of course you've got the fall, like fall festival and those things, and of course our final section, which is winter, which is very accurate. Now, this is a section that y'all will probably be able to do better than me, but I ask you all to please hold until I'm done with it because I'm going to get confused.
Well, can I bring up something before
Before
we
we
get
move
to the
on?
winner?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things, and it kind of bothered me a little bit about the film, was the drag change where he's accepting a woman. Normally, I'd be all happy that this covers it because Japan, for as much as people despise or go on about Japan being a free and open society, they're very bad with GLBT.
Yeah.
And to have that moment and then sort of just dash it away really kind of hurts the film in a little bit in my sense of enjoyment, where it's like maybe this film's trying to do something original here, and then they dash it away, and it's kind of like no, they're following tradition.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit more. I felt a little bit more leery with it being treated as a joke, in a
Mhm.
sense, that concept of absurdity. Though at the same time, the fact that many people LGBTQ in anime are usually treated as villains or over sexualized.
Yeah.
I guess if you look at that spirit of things, this is progressive in that sense, though not progressive
Well,
in full.
it felt almost Shakespearean to me because like Shakespeare did that all the time with like people that dressed up as the opposite gender and all that stuff. But I do think
Well,
that
at that time, Shakespeare, I mean, it was unheard of to have a woman on stage.
oh yeah, I know. Well, but I mean
Right.
more in the context of the story because yeah, I know why they did that for practical reasons. But I do think that you bring up a very important point about Japanese society in general, which is that uh, Japanese society I've noticed has a surprising amount of like conservatism in its social attitudes towards people and their relations to each other and that kind of stuff, and that being a pretty chief one. And I found that pretty interesting because again, we in the West do sort of think of Japan as being very ahead of us, as in at least in terms of technology and stuff like that. And in many ways they are, but then in other ways it's like, yeah, they have a lot of very kind of, I guess you could say, conservative ideas about like, well, not just relations, but like senses of social cohesion. They're very homogenous. There's a lot of things that we don't value in our culture.
And it's always going to be a mix. But yeah, if you look at it, I mean, of course, there's also xenophobia
Yeah.
and various things like that. Though I do feel like society is improving.
It
It's
is.
not what-
It is.
yeah.
If you
Like I
see some of
said-
the newer stuff out that's coming
Yeah.
out, it's more being more open in society. And if you listen to some of the more open communities, I mean, you can see them on YouTube and whatnot. They're becoming a little bit more accepting as it goes because they're like, well, we can't keep hiding this element of society.
Hmm.
But they're still very hard and traditional about situations, about love being openly between any gender. I mean, you still won't see a couple. I mean, the idea of Japan, especially holding hands in public, is such a shocking thing in reality of Japan.
Oh
Well,
Women are expected to always be prim and proper with makeup and all that, still in Japan.
yeah.
And
Well,
so,
not to mention something like Ranma 1/2, where like the whole, the whole storytelling device is the idea of gender bending, and that's like, it's playing with it, but it's not really thinking about it in a kind of serious way,
Right.
in a way that you would think about it nowadays. Like it's a point of comedic, tension, but it's not thinking about like any kind of serious, transgender issues
well,
or anything
it
like
wasn't
that.
about transgender. It was more about womanhood
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Rama, which is what most
Yeah.
people don't understand.
Well, but you know what I
It
mean,
was-
though.
yeah.
It's there's a dimension to it nowadays that we would have to touch on just because it's
Yeah.
so much in the cultural zeitgeist and the awareness and the attempts to be accepting and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
and keep in mind, Ranma was in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Oh,
and
yeah.
Ranma had a few other things that didn't quite age so well. Quite a bit involving China.
Oh, good God.
So,
But
but
I mean, look
yeah.
at Mirai, one of the last anime we covered.
No.
That one was incredibly progressive in some stances. The fact that you had the husband staying home and taking care of the children while the wife was going out and working, which is something that
Mhm.
culturally in Japan, the whole idea, one of the reasons why many people work themselves to death in Japan is that it's not two income households. The idea is that you get married, you settle down and have kids. Woman's expected to quit her job, raise the family, and the husband is expected to work themselves until they die. So I'm kind of glad to see that sort of thing
Right.
moving forward because maybe we'll see the suicide rate in Japan go down a slight bit.
As
That's the big problem there right now.
That's
as
for
as
sure.
I heard a saying tonight for the first time, and I quite like it, but I think it's appropriate to this particular discussion, which is that tradition is peer pressure from dead people.
Yeah, pretty much.
No.
Well, and not the least of which, the scene with our hero, basically having the little demons in his head, go to town on him. I'm like, yeah, that hits very close to home, but we'll get there in just a bit.
Well, any other thoughts on our guerrilla theater section? Well, why don't we move on? So I'm going to rush through this and then we'll come back. So hold until I get to the end. Again, once I get started, I don't want to lose my place.
Go for it.
So, of course, at this point, this cold, as it's referred to, has spread to a lot of people. And, of course, she tracks it down to the source and finds out from him, essentially, about the feeling. Finds out about the feelings of the senpai for her and actually confronts her own feelings on it. While he's going through his own existential crisis, sick with the cold in bed. On top of that, you have this whirlwind, which we see at the beginning, tearing up the landscape with people getting sicker and sicker. And so to speak, our main character being one of the few people left that can actually stop it. And this was a scene that this was a whole thing. The first time I watched it, I was totally what's they call it? It went totally over my head. And the second time I watched it, it wasn't as bad. Maybe it's because it was at the end of the night the first time, and this time it's not as bad about that. But this time I felt like I understood a little bit better, but still, I know I missed some of the metaphors. I know the metaphors about like libido versus the what was it? The ethical things, the right things to do, the logical things to do. Then of course you've got the love sickness, all of this all mixing together for that final thing as to where they can finally meet. But what are y'all's thoughts on this? Because like I say, I still to this day don't 100% fully get this last section other than at a basic level.
Honestly, I think it's like the best part of the film because, and it's the strongest because he's laying at home alone, and he's got the book like right beside him to give to her, and he's alone, and he's dealing with all of these thoughts while he's heavily sick. It's obviously a sickness that has put down a lot of people that isn't that far from like COVID or something like that, So, to be honest, his mind is kind of in limbo while he's wrestling with the fact that he didn't accomplish his goal, that his ego kind of outwon himself, and all these thoughts that he had at the beginning where he was like, well, the thing that I think about is success and profit, so he's wrestling with these, but he also has like these lustful feelings as you have these almost Gonzalez like dudes running around in his head going yeehaw, and I think it's ultimately also the fact that he is struggling against his feelings for her, that he doesn't realize that she's already up there helping him, and whatever she's giving him is fighting the disease that is going on, raging in his body.
Well, this section of the film, so thematically, I think this is where it all comes to a head, because it's the idea that this old man is the god of, I forget what, but he, his repercussions throughout history, throughout the people that he's touched, he doesn't feel like he accomplished what he wanted to out of his life, but she says, no, you did, touch people's lives, and so he had a more positive impact on people than he thought, and it kind of shows that even though perhaps our lives didn't necessarily turn
Going
out.
on that, I think
Yeah.
he might be the god of love, because
Yeah.
what you were saying, the sickness is lovesick, which I hadn't caught on it until you said that. That makes a lot of sense, and if that means he might be the god of love, and he was thinking, I didn't do my impact that I wanted, but she's showing that he did have an impact.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, maybe
That's why
maybe the idea that love is a sickness, maybe he's kind of coming to grips with that, and he's like, oh, I've caused more trouble than I thought, or I've caused more problems than I've solved. But she's like, no, it's the opposite. So it's partially it's how you look at it, but the fact that he can
Right.
feel that way is saying a lot. But I do think that it is a sickness, and you notice that the people, they're sick, but they're not like it's a sickness, but it's not like
They're not dying.
it's not fatal. Yeah, and that's another thing that it's kind of unfair of me to like compare it to COVID, because this was before that, and the symptoms are nowhere near as severe and all that stuff.
Well,
But
they say
it's
it's a cold, really.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
cold's
Yeah.
best likening it.
Well, but my point is, like, they call it the love bug for a reason, because it does, presumably, it does bite you, and it does, spread and
And yet
all
it
that kind of
did
stuff.
seem like the main person that it seems like it has affected. Well, two people is this god that we is that she
Yeah,
goes to first, and the senpai.
yeah,
You
and
know,
I think he probably had a more severe case of it in a negative way, and that's thematically, that's kind of where it all comes to a head. I think for me personally, that's where it was the hardest to watch, because it hit way too close to home, because that has been like that whole scene where he's just in bed, eating himself up, and the thoughts are coming at a million miles an hour, and they're all very negative thoughts. They're very destructive, and like, you have the lust, you have the feelings of like, if only I were more successful, if only I had this and that, all these things that are all flooding at you all at once, and they won't go away, and all that stuff. Like, that has been my life for a good number of years, and with particular intensity these last few years, in the wake of the bad breakup I had with my ex-fiance and everything. So it's like that, plus his quixotic battle and all that stuff. It's like that does not put me in the best headspace, and it's a headspace I've been trying to get out of. And thankfully, lately I've been more successful at it than I have in a while. But it's one of those things. It's like I give the movie credit for showing that very accurately, like what it feels like, to those of us who perhaps don't know what it's like or whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's a very painful thing. It's always painful to see like your deepest, darkest feelings kind of put forth onto the screen there. But
Manifested, yeah.
yeah, well, but it also, I mean, I'm glad that it exists for those of us who want to know kind of what does it feel like. Well, there it is. But yeah, I can see just what a dark place he's in. Um, and that's also why I'm like, well, sorry, buddy, but love is not this cure all thing that's just gonna make your life better. It's gonna make you not a wretched person or anything. You have to love yourself. You have to, that's, to me, that's, if I were writing this, that would be the message I would put forth in it, is you can't expect to love anybody if you don't love yourself. And
It's 100% true, but they're doing this more of a like a rom-com thing where
yeah.
that's
Well, and
just
that's why
how
I've
it
really
happens.
grown to hate rom-coms now, because I think it's kind of a lie, that I just
Yeah,
don't.
I still enjoy them. I'm a hopeless romantic, I guess. But
I mean,
I enjoy 'em.
I'm trying to recover from having been that, and having
Yeah, I
been
know where you're at. I've
nearly
been there.
destroyed, by it. So, but it's my point is, like, I know how that feels to be torn apart inside, and it's like
Yep,
he comes to the conclusion that I wanted to come to, and I never did. And in fact, life showed me that the opposite is the case. So it's like I'm trying to learn to love myself, because that's really all you have at the end of the day. So,
yep. Me
that's,
having a
again,
stroke to do that.
I'm letting my bias show there. But I think if you're one of the few people that is lucky enough to have it turn out this way, then good for you. But I highly doubt that that's the norm. And you know, they definitely show that part of the process very accurately, though. Just that whole, like, your mind is trying to destroy you. And the only part that they don't talk about is the kind of suicidal thoughts kind of aspect of it. But that might have been a little too dark for a movie like this.
Right.
It was
It was
definitely getting dark there at the
yeah. I was just about to
It
say it was
was.
dark enough with that. Like adding that to it would be too much.
Mm.
bridge too far.
Mhm.
Anyone else on that last section? Brittany?
Well, I'm gonna turn sort of what you guys have been saying around. Um,
Go for it.
it's not a love sickness. It is a sickness basically the sickness. A lot of the storm, this representation of the storm and whatnot, is a representation of fate, not so much love. Now there is a representation of love, but you really have to watch because you can miss it. In Japanese and traditional Asian belief, there is something called the red thread of fate. And there is a
Yep.
brief scene you see where threads are spooling about, and one small red thread is there.
Right.
And so what's going on is basically the red thread leads you to your love. So we're basically seeing this world sort of collapse, and it's basically an embodiment of depression, more so. The fate, everybody's going through this sickness, and she's trying to be the light to help bring people out of this. And the last person she can reach is her senpai, the person who loves her. And so it's that twist of fate that you have to confront fate ahead and go through the storm to see through.
That
That's sort
makes
of what I
sense in
do
a way.
more.
Well, and again, that helps to, because I'm bringing into it not only my personal biases, but my kind of Western ideas of these things. And, I remembered from having dived into the Chris Chan story, which Brandon will know all about, that there's that idea of the red string, that whole thing, which I did know about that. And I did that did go through my mind when the tent of the beef stew or whatever that was, you mentioned the name, when that tent collapsed, I actually kind of thought of that, because it's a rope, big rope holding up the tent. But I did kind of think of like strings and fate and that kind of stuff, but like, tying it in that way helped to again, I knew that there were associations that I was making that were perhaps not those that were culturally intended.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to be so informed.
Yeah, because wind in Japanese tradition is very important, especially storms. One, they get hit by typhoons a lot, but they also credit themselves, the god of wind, Fujin, in their mind. It's been a hero in their history, because basically a storm long ago destroyed an invading Chinese fleet.
Yeah.
Right out, and they've always looked at that as a fateful moment that the wind of fate involves in Japan.
And hasn't that happened a few times in history? If it
A
wasn't,
few, yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought it was the winds, and also like might have been earthquakes as well. But like, yeah, I read that in my history books growing up too. That happened enough times in their history at critical junctures that it really reinforced their isolationist beliefs, but also just the idea that they were special and protected, and that they needed to be kept that
see
way,
that.
all that kind of stuff.
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to visualize an exact scene with the red thread in this one, but I'm definitely familiar with the concept too. And one thing that amused me watching Tatami and the main character and his relationship with Oz, he keeps talking about the black thread of fate that ties them together, because it's a character that he can't stand. And so this one, of course, is the more positive relationship. I could see how that would be drawn in. But yeah, I had forgotten that a little bit about the storms too. That's a fun thought.
Yeah,
Because
especially with
it
the
was definitely
that
was a
last scene.
storm. That was a heck of a storm
Yeah.
that they had going on.
Yeah,
Well,
that last scene.
in terms of a climax, that's a very I am a fan. I'll say this: I'm a fan of when movies are able to externalize internal conflicts, and this definitely does that.
And of course, in my kind of weird, twisted, movie-addled mind, I see the two ideas of the storms of fate and whatever, and the love sickness being tied together beautifully by the title song in Christopher Guest's The Mighty Wind. Especially the great lyric of "A mighty wind is blowing us all."
You know what's
I
funny?
don't-
How funny you say that, because I didn't think of the title track, but for whatever reason, "A Kiss at the End of the Rainbow" is in my head. I don't know
yeah,
why but yeah, that did actually enter my head.
that was that was a good love song there too, and
That was an Oscar nominated
I
song.
know. I was still crazy. I still thought it was great they gave one of them a nod.
And it was a beautiful song. But no, the funny you mentioned that, because that actually did enter my head. So we were thinking
Right.
along similar lines. Look at that.
I just want to mention one thing that none of us has mentioned. At the beginning, when they were at the wedding, and that guy was talking about you don't marry for love, you marry for supposed to
Yeah. Which
be
most
thinking.
marriages in most of history have been arranged and not made for love
Well, he
at
wasn't
all.
saying arranged necessarily. He was just saying you shouldn't be in love with them. You make rational decisions. I
Right.
thought it was funny, but it also, some of the things he said did make more sense.
Well, he clearly didn't get what he wanted out of life, so he's trying to rationalize it.
Right.
Well,
Right.
he was a sophist after all, and that's what sophism is all about, is it not? Is trying to make a spurious point and do it as if you're the authority on there.
Mhm.
Although I have to say, the idea that you should marry someone that you are completely unpassionate about is maybe taking it a little too far.
Yeah.
But the
But it
idea
did make
that
sense a little bit.
letting your passion dictate who you are with, there is something to be said for being not going too far that way either.
Mhm.
Because
Right.
if you're all about the passionate love and attraction and everything, and that's all you're about,
It's gonna
It'll burn
die.
that
out.
will fade.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
will cool. There are no two ways about it.
Yeah.
So if that's
No
the
couple's
only thing,
ever kept it
yeah.
going for long times.
Well, it's like the different types of love that the Greeks talked about. You got eros and agape and philia and all those different ones. I have long, ever since I heard about that concept, I have long felt that if you don't have philia, if you don't have a way or an interest in being friends with someone,
Oh, totally.
then when the eros is gone, you're screwed.
Exactly. I
And
absolutely
eros
agree.
will leave.
That's why I always
So,
say, I'm
yeah.
looking. I don't just look for love. I'm looking for a best friend. Like something I
Mm.
want to share everything with.
Yeah. So it's like, I like that guy's argument because I could actually appreciate it.
Right.
I
That's what I
didn't
was saying.
fully
It's
agree
like
with it
it
because
was
he
a
went a
little
little far.
funny,
But
and
yeah,
I don't agree with everything he said, but I could definitely see
yeah.
his point of view and
Mhm.
his thought process.
Yeah, well, and he's coming at it from a place of bitterness and trying to
Right.
justify the way his
Right.
life has gone. So that's where the inauthenticity factor comes from. But yeah,
Mhm.
I noticed some merits in his argument too, insofar that
Mhm.
as you do want something deeper to latch onto, and also again, it depends on how you define like relationships and marriage and stuff. Because again, most relationships and marriages in history have not been made for love. They've been very strategic, like family alliances and things like that. And people have managed to, there's a lot of stories of unhappiness within arranged marriages, but then there's also been instances where people have learned to get along. They've learned to create something out of, these not exactly romantic circumstances and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
it's the idea that you shouldn't base a relationship on pure carnality or pure, intense love that can fade away and all that stuff. So I got that as well.
All right. Well, I guess why don't we go ahead? Is there anything else before we move on to the technical aspects?
There's one more thing.
Go for it.
Hentai Woody in this film.
Yes. Again, it's the main character's mojo.
Yeah.
Oh, that, yeah.
I mean, this is, of course, after. I mean, Hentai Woody is a meme from 2010, so it's very amusing that we get this cowboy that looks like Woody from Pixar's Toy Story. That is a embodiment of the senpai's lusts and perversions.
His masculinity,
Mhm.
you might say. I would have to say I would hope that my mojo would look a little bit more badass than that, but I guess we'll never really know, will we?
You know what's
Right.
weird? That whole scene reminded me a lot of there is a game called Catherine, and I don't know why, but I kept being reminded of that. Of course, he's kind of likened to a sheep, but still, it is interesting. I don't know why I was reminded of that game, which I played many years later. But I know the game came out before the movie, so.
Right.
All right. Well, why don't we go into technical? Brittany, you had said, I think before you had commented about the animation style, so I thought we would be able to go back into it.
It's definitely a unique one because it's a bit more cartoony. But I mean, yeah, it's from the same group that did Devilman Crybaby, which is far darker, of course, than this.
Slightly.
Slightly, yes. Having heads decapitation
Yeah.
is not happening in this film.
Damn it.
But yeah, damn, gosh, damn. But no, I mean it's an unusual style in Japanese. It's not. It's more childlike, but at the same time, this is a very adult film. I would not really say this would be something that even in Japan I would take a child to, because I don't think the child would
No.
like it or understand it as much.
No, it's definitely not a kids film.
This would be more like, if we're thinking an American equivalent, this would be more like Adult Swim kind of stuff, especially because a lot of that stuff has, I think, a retro vibe to the animation. Like it has sort of an old school feel to it, I think. But
I always think that I think when we look at the work, it's more reflective of almost a 1920s style incorporated with a modern style. So it looks much more simplistic and more cartoony, but extremely unique when it comes to what I've seen. And at a time where I see show after show after show that looks very similar to each other, it is kind of cool and refreshing to see something going for an entirely different style. There are people who break away from it, and it's good though to see any of those people. And it's great to see that kind of artistic talent there. Even the poster, which I have in the background, I find it. I've gotten to stare at it a lot during this time that we've talked.
And if we had done the Versus Awards, this would be a prime contender for best poster cover art, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you look at her eyes. At first, if you look at it, it looks like the eyes are shut, and it kind of almost looks like this kind of innocent, just taking in the moment. But then if you look more closely, you can almost see like a small area where the eyes are, where they might be slightly open, which makes her expression a little bit less innocent.
Right.
And which, again, that's probably not necessarily by design, but if it is by design, I feel like that's a brilliant way of doing it. Because, again,
we're just looking at the side of the sun of the article.
Actually, another thing, well, this goes on the animations. I really like the animation of how they show when they were drinking, and he's mouthing off on how life is horrible and everything. She's saying how it's great, and in her animation, she's seeing flowers and all these lovely things, and he's seeing these awful things. And I think the animation did such a great job of helping explaining what they were saying.
Well, I'm a big fan of surreal animation, and I will say that I felt like, again, I feel like I really raked this movie over the coals, and it wasn't because of the film itself, really.
Right, it's more personal.
Yeah, it's more of like rom-coms themselves relative to my own personal life, but
Right.
in terms of the craft of filmmaking, I think this definitely has a unique animation style, and it is surreal. It is very intense, and again, part of my criticism was just trying to figure out what the fuck's going on when there's so much shit flying at me every 5 minutes. But
Here too.
but again, I do really like surreal. I think maybe that was part of the issue I had, was that this is ostensibly kind of a standard rom-com plot that just happens to be told in a very surreal, intense way. And I've tended to be more accepting or fascinated by like something even like Pink Floyd The Wall, which is more overtly surreal and more like a long form music video, basically.
Right.
But like that one just went 100% for the surreality, and it did have a story, but it was
Right.
done more as, again, a long form music video rather than as like this feels like a kind of standard rom-com that just happens to have an intensely surreal animation style. So maybe that's part of where the disconnect came from, as well as like they just expect us to buy a lot that is
Oh,
thrown
they
at us
do. I
very
mean, but
quickly,
I never really. I just took it at face value. I didn't,
Well,
try to overthink it, because a lot of it obviously wouldn't make sense in the real world. But
Yeah. Well, and
it's a
I would know
good
nothing about overthinking things. But
right,
again, I think just purely as a piece of filmmaking, I think there's something to be said for surreal animation. And this thing definitely commits to its style. And it doesn't look like your typical anime, which is good.
right.
one.
That's what
I would
I love
also
about
say
it.
stylistically, it borrows a little bit from from like the woodblock kind of art that is pretty popular with Oriental cultures. Because you know what I mean, like just the look of the characters and everything. It's there's a simplicity to it. They're kind of flat designs, but the way they're animated, it comes out very nicely, and it doesn't look just like clunk. I'm not sure I'm describing it the right way, but still, but that's kind of the vibe I get. And I also want to mention that the use of color, I think, is pretty great with this one too. It's an extraordinarily colorful film, and they really but the characters themselves are kind of, they're either white or like really really pale pasty white, or they're red if they've been drinking too much or they're sick. I kind of like that way of doing it, because again, it's different. It's not what you normally would see or expect to see, and so
Right.
and it does play into that retro vibe, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
it is a natural thing that, sadly, I have to say it, Japanese culture, they tend to get a little more red in their face when they drink.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing them go red is something that actually kind of happens.
Oh, like when they're
That's
red in the
Right.
face while they're dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on by the
Makes
time they
sense.
reach the dancing part. So they got a lot going on inside.
The selfish dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole dance thing, I was like, I felt like my brain was starting to ooze out of my ears a little bit.
I was just laughing. I just thought it was just so funny.
It was an improv dance, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
As
It
far
was
as the
definitely funny.
flashback scenes, you got a lot of faces with no eyes, no mouth, no expression, while they were reminiscing on certain aspects of their life.
Right.
And I kind of felt like, yeah, they were trying to tell us something interesting, but the places and the people didn't really entirely matter at that time. It was just the thought process that mattered, you know. So that aspect of the production was interesting, and I did find that whole mind trip that was intense. I mean, it was definitely something out of like, I swear, even I swear I saw that in Pierre's trilogy uh, of the Arabian Nights and the Canterbury Tales, and something to that effect. But it was definitely kind of a Dante Alighieri kind of a moment.
What about the music? I mean, I really like the music. I felt like it carried the movie very well. It fit the scenes. It fit what was going on. The ending theme was pretty fun. What did the rest of y'all feel?
I personally didn't really notice the music much at all until the end. The end, I definitely noticed that, and it definitely felt like it fit. But yeah, I was actually thinking at the end, like, oh, look, there's music here. And I'm like, I know they're going to talk about music. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to think of remembering any of the music, and I couldn't really remember any of the music except for the end. So
neither could I.
Yeah. So I guess it's his job, because it didn't distract me from the movie, and it must have fit in, because, you know, most of the time, you know, good music is you're not going to notice too much. There are exceptions, of course, like Star Wars and stuff, but you know.
I was trying to watch it as well as read it, so the music kind of like, I don't know, I didn't hear it, and maybe on a second watching, I might get into the music, but maybe I won't have to read as much as watching a second viewing, whether I do so or not.
Maybe you can find an English dub copy out there, Dave, and you can just that way you'll be able to, on a second viewing, get more from it. I mean, like I said, to me, I know this slaps in the face of your traditional thought process, Jacob, but to me, I actually do think that for a film that is as wordy as this, having it in a language you understand really helps to allow you to get into it better.
Totally.
Because you're not trying to run the race of keeping up with it. Because unless you understand the language fluently, you're going to be falling behind the first time you watch.
Well, and comedy, like I had that happen actually with not an anime, but it was the Jackie Chan film City Hunter, which was an adaptation of a manga, if I recall, but it was a Hong Kong film, but you know, live action. But I remember my brother and we were watching it with the subtitles on, and we weren't really getting it. We weren't really grooving on it. We switched over to the dub, and it actually really made the whole thing, and it made it really fun, because the dubbing, like you got the humor a little bit easier, because again, comedy is partially physical, like you can do like purely physical, like, you know, Charlie Chaplin, who I of course adore. But then a lot of comedy again is verbal, and it's, you know, voice inflections, it's cultural, it's all this stuff. So like that was another dimension that I felt was missing from, and I'm with you. Especially if something's relatively serious, I want to hear it in the original language, even if I can't understand it, because I want to hear the music of it. And I did hear that here, except again, when it's comedic, then I feel like I'm more alienated from it than I'm brought into it. And in this case, it was again kind of irritating to me. So this would be something that, again, as very torturous as this particular viewing experience was, I think this would be an interesting movie to revisit if I'm ever lucky enough to find the gold at the end of the rainbow, and if I can find a dubbed version, you know, if I'm in a different, you know, and knowing what to expect, all this stuff. Because again, this has a lot of different levels of depth to it. It's got artistry, it's got all that stuff. You know, it happens to hit me at a time and in a way that is not pleasant for me. But I think it might be interesting to revisit if other things happen in my
Maybe
And
they
life.
as we've said a few times on this channel, that can make all the difference in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons we did that Second Chances month, and
Yeah.
most of us were able to get a little more out of it the second go around, than we had before. I
Yeah.
think Dave being the exception with that one.
Well, that's
but
again. I have to stress it over and over again. This
Mhm.
isn't the movie's fault because I
Mhm.
stress it because I hate it when people
Mhm.
take their subjective experiences or their subjective opinions and they try to act as if
Mhm.
it's the movie's fault. And I'm not trying to do
Mhm.
that at all because I think relative to what the movie was trying to do, I think it did it successfully. And that it could hit you in a way that is absolutely the way it intends. It just relative to my own life, I'm like, yeah, this is not
Yeah.
what I want to be reminded of. It's not where I want to be in my
Too
life.
much.
And I also just don't think that it's a
Yeah.
necessarily healthy attitude to have is like of conceptualizing of love in this way. I don't exactly know what a
Mhm.
healthy version of love is, and I'm trying to find that. But right now I'm focusing on treat yourself the way that he would want to treat her, presumably. That's kind of
And
where I'm at
yeah.
right now. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I was just trying to think of a really good example because I can think of examples, but like a really good example of a movie where I know very much what you're talking about, that I watched it and I could tell objectively it was a good movie and I was able to appreciate what was being done and the acting and everything. But I, watching Concussion bugged the shit out of me.
Oh, the Will Smith movie? I
Yes.
never saw it.
Well, and a big
Yeah.
part of the reason why is I am convinced that I probably have had a couple of those injuries over the years. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons I have as many headaches as I do. And just watching it play out on screen, it was a terribly difficult and horrifying film to watch.
Yeah.
And it was well made.
Yeah.
And, I'll have it in the collection eventually, but I'm not in a hurry to see it again.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt with Lorenzo's Oil. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
even finish it because
Yeah.
it was too close to home for me.
Yeah.
Again, objectively, it was good from what I
Right.
remember of it, but again, it was very painful to watch.
Now that
But
Jackie Chan movie that you mentioned,
Oh, City
I
Hunter.
don't watch movies like I said that I don't understand. I might watch a
Mhm.
Jackie Chan movie only because obviously I love knowing what they're saying.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan's fucking funny just watching him.
Yeah, I was gonna
Oh,
say
that's
So
probably one
I
of
might
his funniest.
that's
I might
Yeah.
enjoy.
that's a safe one because like action
Yeah.
comedy, like even if you were to watch that with the original language, it would
Yeah.
still probably work better
Still
than
has
others
some
would.
still resonant with me because
Right.
he's just funny. He's just really
Yeah,
funny.
he is talented.
That's the
But
one
way
where
he
Huh?
fights.
he falls into the Street Fighter machine, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah, he
Yeah.
dresses up
that
as
movie
Chun
was
Li.
crazy.
That was really funny.
And I'll admit this one is one that I would like to watch in English. I don't have HBO Max and I have no plans of getting it. So I don't know
It's the
when
best
I'll
thing you
get
can
to
ever
see it in
do.
English, but I'd like to see that. Personally, I never found it
Well,
difficult
you
to
could
watch
always
it
get
in
it for one. You
Japanese.
could always get it for 1 month.
But
They have like a $5 version or something with commercials,
yeah,
and you can get it for 1 month. So
yeah.
it's like renting
I'm
it.
not even going to bother.
And
Not
I
even
feel
going to
like-
bother. I've already got Netflix and Amazon. I barely use either one.
Well, they suck.
I
I mean, we're talking
yeah.
about HBO Max, though.
Well,
Both of those away.
and I have a huge pile of stuff that needs watching. So and two full-time jobs. Not going to happen
Yeah.
anytime
I think
soon. But basically, I would like to see the English version eventually. And I can definitely say, like, this one I did not find too much trouble with. The machine gun pace of the dialogue and Tatami, I could see how that would be
Oh
a
my god.
hard call for someone who's coming to it fresh. But then again, subtitles never bothered me as much as they do some people. But sometimes there are formatting and font issues with the subs that it's like, what were they thinking?
I
I've
mean,
seen
like the ones
movies
I
like
had
that.
today
Yeah.
with this movie.
But I will say the music. I really love the music. I did notice it. I do think it's good. The ending theme is Koya no Oruke, is by Asian Kung Fu Generation, who also did the opening theme for Tatami. They do a lot of really fun themes, and I generally enjoy their songs. And then, like I said, I love the kind of jokey songs they did during the guerrilla theater segment. And that weird little musical number they do for the sophist dance. Like whenever I think of the sophist dance, I do hear the music because I am the oh oh and the beat that was playing behind that. To me, it's a big part of the film. But I know everyone goes in with their own things that I go into every movie looking and listening for the music, and I've said before, I'm one of those people that feel like very few movies are better if you don't remember the music, and those
You're better at multitasking.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that because
I mean, compared to Brandon, he'll tell me he watched a whole series while doing 50 other things. I'm like, how?
I'm doing other stuff right now. I'm playing a bunch of games while I'm talking to you guys.
See, I can't really multitask. If I'm watching something, I'm watching it.
Yeah, but you notice the music on top of reading and watching. So that's three things.
Well, again, in fairness, when I did see this the first time, it was in theaters, and it's a whole lot easier generally to focus when you're in the theater. So that's part of it there. And the subtitles are much bigger, so it's easier to read them.
And the music's much louder.
Yes,
I noticed the music too, and I mean, I thought it was fine for what it was. I mean, again, I was so kind of overwhelmed by everything else, but I think that it seemed like it served its purpose well, and the score itself, I think, served its purpose well. So,
well, I don't have a complaint with it. Unlike another anime we discussed, I won't mention the name of.
Well, I mean,
the one that got the Oscar nod that this one was angling for. We've actually the year that this one in Mirai came out, we've also covered Makia. They were all submitted for Oscar the same year with 5 other anime. There were 8 anime submitted.
I could see this one winning it.
I got one of them.
I can't even see. No.
I couldn't think of it. Yeah, this one didn't get the Oscar nod for that year, and Mirai did. So Mirai beat this one
I don't get it. I just don't fucking get it.
Personally, I think Nakia might be the best of the 3, but I
haven't seen it, so I can have no comment.
The answer for Oscars is money. That's why.
Well, I mean,
was there a lot of money in Mirai? I mean,
no,
probably
no.
I can't imagine it would be.
I look at it like it's all about your reading acuity, how fast you read, and then can look at other things at the same time. Some people can read and listen to music at the same time and fully understand the song and the nuances while they're reading a book. And others, and like for me, I can do things where I understand the verbal, but my reading acuity is much slower than most. And I absorb the written word a lot slower than I absorb audio. So if I'm reading it, 90% of my concentration is on the reading, and 10% is on the rest. So I'm actually glad that I watched this in theaters first, because if I had first watched this on the TV set, I probably would have come across with these like, I don't remember what was going on during the screen. I was busy trying to keep up with the dialogue.
Yeah, well, I actually had to pause a few times just because I was like, take a breath, from just all the shit that was flying at me. But in terms of understanding, I could understand, the words that I was reading. I could, put them together with the pictures and all that. But for me, it was more just everything else, not just personal stuff, but also culturally, am I understanding what I think this means versus what is necessarily is intended to mean, that kind of stuff. And as we've learned tonight, there are other things that are not necessarily readily apparent to Western audiences that are kind of important to understand things in their original context, which I always try to do. But it was, like I can understand. I'm good at visuals and subtitles and all that. It was just more so like not only is there a lot of shit flying at me, but also it's meant to be humorous and romantic. So it's like that's two extra gauntlets that I have to run in addition to all this stuff. Because like again, something being romantic and humorous, those alone could be gauntlets that a movie would have to run. All on their own, even if it was in English and all that. But then you throw in all these added dimensions, and then that's just an extra challenge.
Challenge?
Challenge accepted.
So, why don't we go ahead and start wrapping up with
Okay.
favorite scenes? So, I want to do this a little bit differently, just a different angle.
Yes, Sydney.
So, favorite season and favorite scene.
Oh
So we'll
boy.
start with we'll start with the opposite end. So we'll start with you, Kroll. What would be your favorite season? So I guess out of the 4 seasons that we covered, your favorite scene.
I have to think about it for a second.
Yeah, I had to think too.
I mean, I like the first. I was kind of a tie between the first and the last. Not that I don't like the in between too, but just the way it started with a couple exceptions. It started out pretty good, and I like the way it ended too. I'm gonna go with the end, but the beginning is definitely very close. Favorite scene. That's another hard one too. There's a few good scenes. I'm just trying to think about it. Usually I think about it while we're doing the discussions, but just I haven't really thought about it too much. I don't know. Maybe I guess the scene with him having the nightmare, his inner demons, whatever you want to call it. Some of it, part of it, I wasn't sure. I was thinking he had overcome all his demons when he like gone on stage. When he went through all that to get on stage and stuff. But obviously he hadn't beaten his demons, and to see them like that and manifested, that was a really great scene. I mean, it was a really deep scene. You really see how everything. And I definitely can relate. I've had some demons like that myself. Maybe not that degree, but it was definitely great scenes. I'd have to choose that as the best scene. There's probably a comedic scene I really enjoy too, but I can't think of it right now. So I'll let you know if I think of it later.
Well, how about you, Jake? What's your favorite season and favorite scene?
This hard to pick favorites in this one, but it's actually easier for me to say kind of my least favorite season, which would be winter. I actually was not as big a fan of that relative to the others. If I had to really stat them all out, it might be spring in the lead, followed very closely by fall. In terms of the seasons, that seems about right, I think. Although they'll hold me to it, I guess. As far as scenes, possibly the first bar scene where Otome meets the guy and gives him that friendly punch, and then when she meets
That's it.
Higuchi and Hanaki, that scene kind of bleeding into the scene where they join the wedding party and going on from there. I really like that whole sequence. the actual beginning, which was the first scene we saw. I just really like that sequence. That really brought you into the movie, sucks you right in, kind of gives you a feel for what's going on, just not quite as crazy as it's going to get. Maybe the big climactic scene of the Guerrilla Theater, where with all the confessions and all the falling koi and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's really hard to pick a favorite.
Oh, I'm gonna mention that the scene that you said where she he gropes her and she punches him. I would say that's
Yeah.
probably my favorite comedic scene. That was
Yeah.
really funny and good, and I just I like
That's
that.
probably my favorite particular moment, or when she called it a friendly punch. That was my favorite particular
Yeah, that was
moment. I
really funny.
think.
And when
Yeah.
she tells a little story about it, how she came about learning it.
Right.
So, Don Underwear. What is your favorite scene in your favorite season?
My favorite scene would definitely be the last the mind tripping scene. That really spoke to me. As far as favorite season, I would have to say it's kind of a tie between the third and the last. Because I do like opera, and I did like the idea that you know, Don Quixote, Cyrano, and uh, Count of Monte Cristo were having like a demon love child in this whole process. So it's definitely a unique thing as far as that. I guess the movie is slightly growing on me while I'm thinking about it, but I still had a lot of what the fuck moments, and it was hard to follow
Really?
because there was a lot going on. There
There
really
was a lot going on. Well, I guess it's subtitles again, so it's different. Probably different.
Well, I
If you've
really
seen it.
wanted to catch like how many books were like connected to each other, and stuff like
Oh, there
that,
was
and
a
it just
bunch. Yeah.
ran too fast for me to catch on. They were talking about Alexander Dumas and stuff like that, and that was kind of cool. And then it ran just all together, and it was like a blur. And then so I don't know.
It was really
To me,
good. It was really good to hear it.
Well,
let
I
alone
think
understand it.
I'd have been okay with to me it wasn't even so much that there was a lot going on, because I mean I've loved plenty of movies that have a lot going on. It was more so that they were just expecting us to buy so much that it's like, what kind of world is this? So this is one where gods exist, and these the monkey and the parrot and the little demon child and all this shit that's all going on all at the same time, while we're also trying to get to know our characters, while we're getting used to the style. That whole thing is more what got to me, not simply that there was a lot going on, because I've followed plenty of complex plot lines before, but it was that plus the presentation that really got to me. But I don't know if you had any more to add, but I could throw in my favorites or whatever.
Go ahead.
That's tough. Well, I know my favorite scene, which is the same one that we've mentioned, the bar scene, just because for me it was the sound effects were so great. I felt like
Right.
the sound of his fingers, the sound of the punch itself, the repeating of the same voice clips, like that was really well done. So that really is what made it for me. Favorite season? Oh boy. I don't know if I have one, because I was gonna say the first one, just because that was where things were relatively happy go lucky, and sort of we see some devolution over time, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, but that was with all the drinking and stuff that I don't care about. So maybe I would have said maybe the second season or the third season, something like that. Summer or fall, I don't know. Winter, I think it had arguably the most consequential impact for the story. Like that's kind of the movie in a nutshell in its own way. It had the most important scene for the story, which was him succumbing to being tortured by the demons in his head. It's again, that was probably my least favorite scene in terms of just pleasantness to watch because I relate to it way too much. And again, but I have to ding them for inaccuracy and that they don't get to the just wanting to die, that part of it. But other than that, they captured that feeling and kind of what it feels like. They captured that very accurately.
Yeah, I give them a lot of props for that for getting it pretty accurate. I mean, I don't ding them for the other because it just would just totally turn the movie way darker than it
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you want to, for anybody that ever wants to know what that feels like in a visual format, you just need to throw in the, wanting to kill yourself kind of
Yeah.
aspect, and then you'd have it all.
Yeah, then
That's
you'll be truly
yeah,
truly all there.
yeah, but
Maybe the
yeah,
demon saying, you're worthless, you suck, you don't
yeah,
deserve to
exactly.
live, something like
Well,
that.
and my demons look a lot scarier than that, so
Yeah.
I like to think that my demons are at least cooler looking than his, although they weren't too bad. Like for some of them, they could look kind of dark and creepy and all that. But I'm
Yeah.
making it out like it's a horror film, and it's not, because it is intended to be a romantic comedy.
It is a romantic comedy, and
It
what
just
they did
happens
has
to
to be.
have this scene that so accurately reflects what it's like to
You
feel that
know,
way.
Yeah.
though, this movie title would actually make perfect sense for a slasher film, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. That's what we needed. We didn't have like a mask wearing killer in this. We had plenty of perverted guys. We had an incel brigade. We had all these other people. We didn't have the guy who just couldn't take it anymore, and so he decided to become a slasher villain, which is oftentimes what you see a lot of those like sexually frustrated guys, at least in the direct-to-video '80s movies. That's what they did. So we've got the
before they do
spectrum.
the other thing.
Well, we've got the spectrum of what guys do when they don't find love or sex
Or
or
can't get laid.
exactly. We've covered that part of the spectrum. We just haven't covered the slasher, part of it yet. But there's probably another movie where that could happen.
Never seen an anime slasher, but that might be interesting.
Oh, there are those out there. So, Brittany, favorite season and favorite scene?
Well, I have two favorite seasons for two different reasons. Winter for artistically, because I absolutely, you can feel the moment she's walking against the wind and it's forcing her back,
Yeah.
and that's artistically such a lovely put together moment. But also, I've got to call out fall because you don't see musical anime. And that's gives us a bit of a moment. And I mean, yeah, there are anime with music in them, but I mean,
Narima
this was a
Daikon Brothers.
musical moment. So you don't really see that in anime, which is quite unique. So I have to give that also a nod as one of my favorite seasons. Favorite scene, I'm going to go against the group. I love the idea of a crash kotatsu moment to go around and just dropping a kotatsu somewhere.
The running
in the middle of the street.
kotatsu, yes.
Yes. So that means, because I mean, for those who don't know, a kotatsu is basically a table with a heater underneath.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, no
just
idea
having people run around, putting that down, and just relaxing is just hilarious to me.
I just need Kotatsu Kitty with it, and then the whole thing.
Yes. Well, actually, they had the Neko Ramen shop in the series. That could be a way to incorporate the two.
So, I mean, for me, I mean, it's obviously the first season. It's so whimsical. I love the lightness of it. I love the different stories. I could have watched an entire movie, just dump the senpai character and just have her going on this long night bar hopping and listening to different stories of different strange characters that she meets. And that would be, to me, a perfect film.
That's they made that. It was called Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
30
I was gonna say they made that. It's called Midnight Diner, actually,
That too.
from Japan.
Well, they made at least 30 different adaptations of it, which I will be covering in August in depth. Personal plug.
August.
So
Yeah,
but
he's
that's fair.
postponing it.
Yeah,
Now-
I had to postpone it from April to August because of it's proving to be much more work than I anticipated. But anyway,
Ah,
Now, I will say that my favorite scene also comes from that, which is the scene where they're looking at their watches and you're seeing the different times go
Yep.
for the different ages. And I love that way that they depict it. And then how they have a callback to it at the end with the older gentleman where his clock is going even faster. And whereas he's towards death. And I love that imagery. I love that concept. It's just something that appeals to me. Well, that's our discussion for this particular movie.
mhm.
And why don't we go ahead and we'll just start back and then go back the other way and start with Brittany. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where we can find you?
Brittany Dotson, aka Ambria Arts, sometimes known as I, through my VTuber format. Most importantly, I'm going to follow a little critic meme here. Buy my book. Demon Blade Book 1 is coming out on the 15th through Amazon. It's going to be international. It is literally a comic series if you like manga. It fits right in that line, and it's available for both print and digital. It's the first print book we're doing.
Is it in English?
Very good.
Yes.
What's it called again?
That would
Demon
be,
Blade.
Okay.
that'd be impressive if you wrote the whole thing in Japanese, Brittany.
Well, I just wanna
Especially
check
since I don't
because
know the language
I
that
know
well.
manga is typically in Japanese, so that's why I asked, because I wouldn't.
It's in English and it's read the way it would be in English, so it's not backwards.
Okay, that's good too. I could probably read backwards, but I couldn't read backwards Japanese. I can read forward Japanese.
So let's see here. So Dane, tell us a little bit about where we can find you.
well, I am Dane Kyle, independent filmmaker and now a film educator on YouTube. My channel is Dangerous Arts, DANEJUROUS Arts. And I did a series called Oztober back in October of 2021, where I reviewed 31 Oz film and TV adaptations throughout the entire month. And I've been working on what was April in Wonderland, where I did the same thing for 30 different film and TV adaptations of Alice in Wonderland. But now I'm moving it over to August because it's proven to be a lot more work than I can get done in the time that I have relative to the scale that I want to achieve it at. Because they're not just reviews. I decided to weave in a storyline throughout the whole thing and to get actors involved, and then I have to work around their schedules and all that good stuff, But it is coming along, though, I have to say. I'm pleased with how it's coming along so far, but it's just going to have to be a few more months away, but it is coming.
All right, very cool. So I'll come back to you, Dave. So Jake, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Kotobukijake. I am a movie, anime, music, comics, general media collector here in Central Virginia, where I am the co-host of SeptumSin versus the World, where we talk about all sorts of physical media. Due to events this week, not much is going on, but we've got fun stuff coming. We do. I'll let Septum give you the full spiel, but definitely in addition to that, I have recently begun a full-time job and I have a business of my own, so basically 2 full-time jobs, which cuts down on my viewing time significantly, but I still make time to watch stuff to come on with these fine folks and discuss all the crazy movies that we think to bring out.
Indeed. So, of course, I'm SeptumSin, a SeptumSin versus the World. We talk about physical media. We've had to take a bit of hiatus, but we are coming back strong next week. I did film because I reorganized the collection. So I did
Cool.
film a full-on collection video. So for those of you who love to look at a person's full collection, I will have that on display this Wednesday and it's in 4K. So I actually am filming it in 4K, and we're going to probably start doing our pickups in that format as well. So that's going to be fun. So we can look forward to that. Of course, we had to miss our anime discussion, but we are also gearing up. We'll do maybe a little bit of an if we can swing it, we'll do an Oscar prediction episode. But if you haven't checked it out, on Facebook we are doing a Versus Awards page because we are trying to expand. We want more and more people involved. Eventually, we want to contend with other awards. So we're hoping to get more and more people in. So I want y'all to check it out. Just when you're on Facebook, type in the Versus Awards. You should be able to reach us, and we're open to pretty much anybody who enjoys movies, and we are right now kind of talking about some of the best of 2021, which is going to be very fun, I think, anyway. So we can, and we'll talk more about that as April comes around, when we have our first meeting about what we're going to do, changes we're going to make, and seeing if we want to keep our dates as they are. And I'll hand it over to you, Dave, and then I'll let y'all know what we're doing next at the very end.
Alrighty. My name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this film discovery and journey, where we have been discussing films of all nature, whether it be Japanese anime, whether it be anthologies or any feature film that's out there worthy of actually it being talked about. Well, maybe that's not exactly the right words to say for some, but
Yeah, I was thinking that.
but we do enjoy talking about films, and I do think that there is a voice for that type of discussional area, and hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion on this particular film. So like, share, and subscribe. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also podcast under that channel. Krull is one of those, being on that particular podcast, along with my fiance, who wasn't here tonight, but she was here in spirit. But I also do video uploads and video reviews So definitely check out my thoughts and what I picked up. Heading over to Septum here to tell us exactly what's going on for next week. Oh,
Oh,
You guys skip me.
Crawl.
well, Brandon is the one.
Yeah, my
He-
fault.
Oh,
My
I
fault.
did say you guys, so I ain't blaming one person. Okay, I'm Kroll. Real name Ron. Kroll's a nickname I got in a video game, and it just kind of stuck with me. I enjoy coming on this show. I love watching movies, TV shows, reading books, playing video games. I enjoy talking about all the things I do. So it's great to come on this show. Hopefully, I'll be doing that again with comic books as well. That'll be really fun. It brings me out of my wheelhouse sometimes, like watching this like an anime, and I enjoyed it. So it was nice to get on my wheelhouse and enjoy something that I definitely wouldn't have watched on my own. And I also, like Dave said, I come on his show on Sundays and go through a bunch of movies, and yeah, that's a lot of fun too. Last time was my pick. We did Fast and Furious, which was a great movie, I think, and just fun all around. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, my month is still almost to that halfway point. We're kind of reaching that, and it's a kind of been a strange and lighthearted month overall. You know, it's odd. I don't even remember what we covered last week. Well, we definitely didn't cover. Okay, we covered monkey business. So yeah, so you know, it's been kind of a strange and lighthearted month, as speak. So we kind of continue that theme for I guess a very short feature film, because it's just over 45 minutes. So
Wow.
it just barely meets that feature presentation, which is a film by Dead Gentleman Productions, now known as Zombie Orifice, called The Gamers. A little piece of my role-playing history. So I'm hoping that that this will be one of those that will start us on a path where we get to see some of the sequels of that film. So I do look forward to discussing that next week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool name.
Indeed.
alrighty. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you can like, share, and subscribe. And I'm not sure whether you can do it all in one night like this lady and this senpai were able to do. But have a good evening, and hopefully you'll be back next week.
All right.
Indeed.
All right.
All right.